what appear to be heavily armed American security contractors at one of the sites discuss how to disperse Palestinians nearby.
Hey, got IDF tank posted on the northwest corner now. I brought him in and talked to him. Let's do a show first. I told him to hold there. I don't want this to be too aggressive.
At that moment, bursts of gunfire erupt close by, at least 15 shots.
That is what they've been doing. That is what they have been doing. In case you don't know what you just watched, we have been telling you, or I've been telling you, it's not we, I have been telling you on this channel that they have been creating these kind of hellscapes and been killing Palestinians as they were coming to get food, killing starving people. There are videos of children with bullet wounds who got those bullet wounds when they went to get food. What they're reporting there is what has started to bubble up in the Western media, pointing out that they have been doing what I said they have been doing, effectively murdering Palestinians as they came to get food. And what's wild about it, you can hear the guy say, "Hell yeah, boy, I think I got one." Meaning he's excited, like, "Hey, I think I just murdered somebody." That's fantastic. That's fantastic. The US mercenaries that are there are acting as if it is the Europeans or the Israelis that are doing it. That was an American voice. That was an American voice. So they can try to make it as if, oh, it's just the Israelis that are doing it. No, it is not. It is not. And like to see these camps, like the way and the situation they're putting these people in is astonishing. I'm trying to find a video to give you what this looks like in real terms, because there are a few videos out that are more dispersed, like meaning the people are a little further out. But when you actually get on the ground and you can see what the people are going through, you have people who are laying on the ground trying to avoid gunfire. You have other people who are on the ground trying to not get shot as they scoop their way to try to get food. And you have this weirdo headline coming out of British media right here. This. Deaths in Gaza rise significantly when a controversial group distributes aid, analysts reveal. Okay, that's a weird way to put it. People are being murdered as they try to get food is another way to put it. And more honest. Why are you wrapping this in passive language? And even wrapped in passive language, it's rather disgusting, right? Right here, this. Deaths in Gaza significantly rise when a controversial group distributes food. The controversial group are Israelis and Americans distributing food. That's what it is. That's what it is. I wish I could say I'm astonished by this, but how can I be astonished when I said exactly that this is what they were doing? And in a very basic sense, I don't think it's shocking at all. You have radically racist, fascist government that you've put in charge of supplying aid and food. And you're shocked that the fascist, racist government. Let me ask you this. What did the Nazis do? Did the Nazis distribute food to the Jews, or did they allow those Jews to work themselves to death in camps? And when those camps were liberated, what did those Jews look like? Why do you think that Israelis, who I often call Nazis, because I call them what they are, why do you think it would be different? That's the question. I don't know why US media is shocked by this. I'm more shocked that they're shocked, frankly. I'm more shocked that they're shocked. I hope you guys are doing okay today. I was annoyed by that story because to me, this was the most obvious thing in the world that has been taking place for months. And the moment that you are going to say, hey, the fascist government that's committing a genocide and has been murdering 400,000 people, we're going to put them in charge of food and get rid of the human rights groups. What do you think is going to happen in this situation? What do you think is going to happen, right? This is not even, this should not be physics. This should not be a difficult math problem. This is not rocket science. Racist group hates this other group. Let's try to murder or expel all of this group. Let's give them, put them in charge of food distribution. Let's do that. Fuck it. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning. I have to be honest with you, I'm dragging ass a bit this morning, but I'm here nonetheless, and we're going to do the goddamn news either way you look at it. There's interesting news that is playing out. Congress, oh, by the way, here is a trigger warning. Just, I always like to say trigger warning to give people a heads up. How do you think she got that way? How do you think she got that way? Do you think it was magic? Do you think her parents just didn't give her food? Or do you think that they were effectively starving the population in order to make that child look just like that? I'm telling you, it's the starvation. It's the starvation. In other news, Trump's BBB, big, ugly, grotesque bill, is trying to gain sway in the House of Representatives. Now, this bill, they have been at this for, I think, 12 hours at this point trying to pass this bill, because I suspect Republicans know that there's going to be a backlash with them passing a bill that the overwhelming majority of the American population reviles, hates completely. It's not for in the least. It is probably the most regressive bill we've ever had, where they effectively give a massive tax cut to the rich and they put a massive tax burden on the poor and the middle class. And the amount that they're going to cut from Medicaid, the amount they're going to cut from SNAP benefits, meaning they're literally taking food out of the mouths of children in order to ensure that Elon Musk, Donald Trump, people like Donald Trump get more money on their returns. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. More people will lose Medicaid. More people will lose access to SNAP benefits. Hospitals, or at the very least staff at those hospitals, will lose their jobs. Because again, if you are taking $1 trillion out of this program, who do you think pays hospitals? Who do you think pays those salaries? The government does. And so now those people are effectively going to lose their jobs. There are estimates of up to 500,000 people potentially losing their jobs as a direct result of this bill. Solar power producers out of business because Donald Trump ideologically doesn't believe in those things. And so you are effectively killing a marketplace that was budding in the United States. I guess I'm saying this is not shocking, nor should it be shocking to the American public that if you put Republicans in office, that they're going to do Republican things. And this is a Republican thing. I think the only thing that's shocking, if indeed any of it is shocking, is that they are swinging for the rafters. They are like, it's almost as if this is their last chance. And they're getting everything that they can want out of a bill right now. Now, the wild part is this is probably not their last chance. If a Democrat gets elected, a Democrat is not going to do anything to roll back any of the changes in this bill. They're paid by the same people after all. And when they don't roll back any of the changes in this bill, the next Republican that gets elected and another Republican will get elected because, after all, Democrats aren't going to do anything to roll back changes in the bill, meaning they're not going to do anything of substance one way or the other for the American public to give a damn. They may move to a Democrat just to get a Republican out of office, but they will slosh back to a Republican when they realize the Democratic Party is not worth anything. In which case, Republicans will go even further down this path. That is the gimmick. That is the trick. One party swings for the rafters. The other party stands still. Next time, the other party once again swings for the rafters. The other party stands still. And in that way, you work your way in a very specific direction, further and further to the right, less and less benefits, less opportunities for growth in a particular country, all of those things. Your country becomes worse off as the party system works this magic. Amazing, right? But that is indeed what is taking place right now. We'll see if it passes. I mean, truth of the matter is they were down 4 votes. And with those 4 votes, I think Thomas Massie was one of the main votes. And there were like 3 other Republicans. Thing is, though, when you get to the point of having like 3 Republicans You usually can get those. Like, under normal circumstances, you could find a way to get those 4 votes. You'll cajole, you'll browbeat, you'll threaten, you'll sweeten the pot with something, but you will most likely get those votes. It's one thing if it was 15. It's just 4. It's just 4. So they're doing everything in their power to get those 4 votes. And most likely, I would argue they will get those 4 votes. Oh, that is some bitter coffee. I need some sugar. Yeah, so that is where we are from the standpoint of the big, grotesque, overweight, obese, horrible-looking bill that Donald Trump is effectively trying to push and force through government. One second. I have a new guest. And let's see, about 30. I have a new guest on Iran. Marandi put me in contact with her. And so I am super interested in getting her take. It's one thing to get Marandi's take, it's another thing to get someone else's take. I mean, there are 90 million people in Iran getting one guy's take. It's just that one guy's take. So I'm super interested in hearing what she has to say. I don't know if she's a bit nervous in coming on. We'll see. She wanted some of the questions in advance. She doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, so maybe she thought I was going to sandbag her. I am not. But there are things that I want to know. Some of that stuff is political, meaning the political system of Iran, because I have yet to come across anybody in the States that have a clear-cut understanding of what the political system is like. Some of it has to do with their expectations going forward. I mean, they've been putting out threats saying, look, the slap that you got last time is going to pale in comparison to the slap you get this time around if you attack us. Okay, fair enough. Does that mean no negotiations? Does that mean, because this time around, the moment that the U.S. attacked, they stopped. So if the U.S. attacks again, will they stop? Like, all of these are questions. The idea of going for the nuclear bomb. I mean, look, man, I still say 60% is the worst of both worlds. The worst of both worlds. You don't have enough to make a bomb, but at the same token, you have enough to allow this kind of stalking horse pretext that you're trying to get a bomb. Okay, that's a little weird. I understand why they're doing it. They want to be able to negotiate, and they look at that as their negotiating tactic. But again, if you're not willing to go all the way, and you are using that kind of as a threat that you never intend to fulfill, that's a bit odd. It's a bit odd. Either way, I'm super curious on her take on this stuff, and I'm super curious on how they view it there. It's one thing how we see it. It's another thing how they see it. The other thing that's bubbling up has to do with tensions between, well, let's go back to the first one first. Ukraine not getting their weapon systems. Now, Russia has been unleashing withering attacks on Ukraine. Not so much Kiev, at the very least not recently, but these have been just brutal, powerful attacks that Ukraine seemingly does not have the ability to do anything about. Damn it, I thought I had that thing up. But doesn't seem to be able to do anything about. Now, when Donald Trump was at the NATO conference, and he said, yeah, I had a great talk with Zelensky, and we're going to ensure that they get more weapon systems. Fast forward to a week, and we're running out of weapon systems, so sorry. Now, I have pointed out on more than one occasion, using a chess reference, that the queen is a powerful piece, but she can only move once. And if she is dedicated to one, she cannot be dedicated to the other theaters. And so you may want to open up a theater in China and the Middle East and in Russia or Europe, but you got to pick one. And considering that for the last 3 years, the United States has given Ukraine weapons, hand over fists, hundreds of billions of dollars, where they were just burning through like hotcakes with not seeming much effectiveness considering where we are, then obviously your stocks will be running low. The US have been pushing Europe to give up their stocks. So you can imagine Europe is also running low. So when you get the situation now that erupts with Israel, and what does the US do? It takes what it was going to give to Ukraine and it gives it to Israel. Why? Because it didn't have enough on its own to support both conflicts. And so Israel ends up burning through 20 years worth in 12 days. That doesn't seem sustainable to me because it's not sustainable. Not only are those things extremely expensive, they're bottlenecks in regards to the ability to produce those things, especially with China being very heavy or slow walking its rare earth minerals. So the ability for the US to supply this stuff to all of these theaters has come up for naught, meaning they don't have the capability of doing so. And so regardless of what Donald Trump wanted to do with Ukraine, and I know a lot of people are acting as if, hey, Donald Trump is trying to end the war. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. This has more to do with hard limits on capability than it does with Trump ending the war in Ukraine. These are hard limits, hard realities that the US is coming up against. And in the words of, I think it was Mark Slobodin, she never mistaken the mistress for the bride. Ukraine is just a mistress. It's not the bride. Give me 1 second, making sure she can get on okay. There are difficulties in getting guests on from Iran. StreamYard doesn't work. And so you have to kind of use a different system other than StreamYard. I want to make sure that she can get on without any hiccups or issues. Give me 1 second, guys. Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. That's horrible. Give me 1 second. Okay. Making sure I didn't get the time wrong. 1 second. Okay. Hopefully she will be joining in a few. It's not a good showing when you're late for your first interview. Just pointing it out. So Russia, or let's say RT, is discussing this, and they're pointing out that this spells doom for Ukraine. Now, when I spoke about this with Arno yesterday, I don't want to say he was ebullient, but he did look at it as a positive outcome. And you can imagine the reason he's looking at it as a positive outcome, because obviously Europe can't necessarily carry the burden of supplying weapon systems to the Ukraine by itself. And to make this even wilder, Europe itself has started to pull back on assistance that it gives to Ukraine. It's not just America. Europe is taking a message from Daddy and is doing something similar. Now, you may hear Root vocally claim we're in it for as long as it takes. NATO may be on the table for later. But he's saying those things because he wants. It's kind of like Joe Biden. Do you remember when Joe Biden took over and Afghanistan was collapsing? And what did Joe Biden say? Joe Biden kept saying, we're still there. We're with you for as long as it takes. We are fighting arm in arm. Afghanistan seems strong. And then it collapsed, seemingly overnight. Okay, so Joe Biden is a flagrant liar. Yes, we understand that. But on top of being a flagrant liar, he's lying for purpose. He's trying to make it as if, especially to the Afghans fighting, that the US is still there backing them in their fight, when reality we were getting them the first thing running. So this is something similar that they are doing in Europe to the Ukrainians. As we, there you are. At least there you were. Hold on 1 second. Let me flip over so the audience. Guys, give us a moment. These are technical difficulties. It happens. There you are.
Sorry, it took
Perfect.
me a few minutes more than. Sorry for the delay.
You are perfectly fine. You're perfectly fine. I was more concerned that there wasn't anything
Great.
wrong with the setup. I know some professor
No, it's
and I
okay.
would have such
Mhm.
difficulty trying to get the system to work. So I'm glad that you could join me, and I really do appreciate it. By the way, how do I pronounce your name? Is it Dr.
Problem.
Sadeqi? Sadeqi?
Yes, pretty close. Yes, Satateh, Sadeqi. Yeah, very good.
Okay, well, wait a minute. No, repeat it for me. I just want to make sure, because I'm horrible with names.
Oh no, you did it pretty good actually. So it's Satateh, Sadeqi.
Okay, Satateh Sadeqi. Satateh Sadeqi. All right.
Yes.
I want to introduce my audience to you. Let me get this straight. And here we are. And this. All right. We're joined with Dr. Satateh Sadeqi. She is an associate professor at the Facility of World Studies, University in Tehran, where she earned her PhD in North American Studies. You have no idea how much that enamors me. It's like a Spanish student. It's like being in Mexico and somebody says, "What do you study?" And I say, "I study Spanish." It feels like that. Or it's like you're studying the country that I'm coming from. Just fascinating to me. Iran relations, media, narrative,
Yeah.
and political communication. It says she actively bridges academia and public discourse as co-host of Twice Told Tales podcast, exploring geopolitical dynamics affecting Iran, a frequent speaker and moderator in international conferences. Dr. Sadeqi is committed to fostering dialogue on Iran's global role. And you are a perfect guest, considering what is going on in the world. So welcome to the show, and thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start with something that has been a confusion for myself, and I think for many people in the West. And it has to do with the political system in Tehran. Like how does the, let's say, Ayatollah fit in with the government? And where do the powers overlap? And the reason I'm asking this, Ayatollah in the very beginning made the point of saying, you can't trust the US, to which I said, he gets it. That guy's right. But it was very clear that Pezeshkian did want to negotiate, in which case I was confused because my thought was, and many people in the US thought, well, the Ayatollah is the one who controls it all. And it became clear that that wasn't the case. There was more of a overlap in some way. It wasn't just one man controlling all of the events of the country. It was more complicated than that. For a Western audience, help us understand this to some degree in a way that better helps us understand. That sounds weird. Help us understand this in some degree.
Yeah, I mean, what you shared is very common in the West, even among people who do want to know more about what's going on. People from the so-called left that have a critical, viewpoint of the U.S. imperialism and the U.S. The U.S. description of other countries and other nations. When it comes to Iran, many people still like to call it a theocracy, an Islamist regime, and all those, an authoritarian regime, all those, I would say, imperialist labels that seek to delegitimize an independent government that has found a unique way of practicing democracy and reflecting the willpower and the determination of its people. So if we do not have an exact copy of the Western system of practicing diplomacy, then and democracy, then we're quickly labeled as being illegitimate, as a regime,
Yeah.
which is, or at best, as a theocracy. I don't even agree with the word theocracy to describe Iran's political system, because yes, we have a religious leader as the head of the state, but that religious leader is like voted for and elected by other people who are elected by the public. So it's, we do not directly vote for the supreme leader or the leader. I would not even use the word supreme leader, because it wants to it's not only showing that he's, you know, the top person, but it kind of wants to imply that he's the ultimate power and no one can say no to him, when in fact there is a body that supervises what he does, and if they want to appoint a new leader and change him, they can do that, and those other bodies are elected by the people. So yes, we practice democracy in a different way, but it's still what the people are voting for.
Just to be clear, though, and I hate to interrupt, sorry, but it's in his title, Supreme Leader, right?
I think it's not a perfect translation from the Farsi, because the word that we use in Farsi is, we say, for example, I would say the grand leader, or the, yeah, of the leader, the grand leader of the Islamic Revolution. That's how we call him. So because the Islamic Revolution started by Imam Khomeini, I know many
Right.
people confuse Imam Khomeini with Imam Khamenei too, who was a different person. And it's sometimes funny catching these, you know, Western Iran experts using the same name for both leaders. One has passed away many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was the founder of the Islamic Revolution. He led people's uprising against a dictator. But we believe that this revolution is going to still working towards the achievement of its ideals and of its values. We have not reached the last step where we want to be, but we are trying to be there. And for that movement, for the Islamic, we need a leader, and that leader should be should reflect the will of the people. And that's where I would answer your question about how, for example, position negotiate with the US, because as I said, we have three, just like the US, we have the three different branches of, forgot the word, the judiciary, the executive branch, the legislative branch, right? You have the same thing. And the highest position in the U.S. that endorsed the results of so the Supreme Court more or less has the same function in some ways, has a similar function as the top leader has in Iran, right? For and some sort of practice. Mm-hmm. So yes, if the people of Iran want to negotiate with the US, then they will go vote for a president that in his presidential campaign has made it clear that he wants to negotiate with the US because he thinks that's the way to improve the economy, even though we had once before been proven wrong. Like, we tried to negotiate with the US, we agreed on the JCPOA because we thought that would bring some economic ease and relief from the sanctions. But we were betrayed by the US once again, and the US just unilaterally withdrew from the deal. But again, because there was this public demand, it was, even though a lot of people had learned from the previous experience, but because that was the discourse that was being pushed by the political party that was ruling the country, the leader allows for that. I mean, he doesn't fear. If the president wants to try that, okay. If you think, but you need to, he sets the red lines. Okay, you want to negotiate with the US, you can do that, but you're not going to compromise the revolutionary values. You're not going to compromise our defense capabilities. That's the red lines. You are allowed to practice that, but as the leader, certain red lines for you that would not compromise the entire, like, for example, defense capabilities. Because as you know, one of the things that were mentioned by the US and European partners was that Iran should negotiate over its missile program. And that was like a big no. No, the leader would not allow that to happen.
Wow, I'm fascinated by this interplay. It's just, is there a situation where the government could override Ayatollah? Or not so much? Like, as you pointed out, he sets the red lines. So his...
Sorry, I did not hear you for a few seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're fine. I'm asking, is there any situation where the government could override the will of the Ayatollah? I mean, ultimately, he may not, let's say, intrude, but he does set, these are the boundaries of debate. These are the boundaries of where we're willing to go, and nothing beyond this point. But when he sets that down, that's it. That's the red line. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. So the public...
Yes, I think that's fair to say. It is...
Well, no, go ahead. There's a lag. I'm sorry.
For example, as you mentioned, he made it clear. Yeah, I don't know why there's...
It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, for example, with the negotiations with the US, he made it clear that he does not trust the US, and we have been betrayed.
Yes.
But if the government wants to negotiate with them, okay, they can go ahead and negotiate with them. But it will be only on our nuclear program and not our defense capabilities, which included the missile program. So because that's where we could have become very vulnerable to any invasion or attack from outside, and it would compromise our existence.
Which was
right?
the point.
So yeah,
that was the entire point.
Red lines, but
yeah,
there are a lot of cases. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's very dynamic. It's not monolithic. There are just like in the US, you have the House and the the Congress, and then you have the Supreme Court, and you have the main political parties, and then you have third parties, and there's competition among those. We have some similar bodies and interactions with the political parties. We had the two main conservative and reformist ones. The conservatives were called principalists, but then even these political parties have had offshoots, and so it has changed. It's so dynamic. It changes over time depending on the things that happen. The only difference the US, where other people are going to vote for you, you want me to be the next president. Here we directly vote for our president.
Let me ask you this. So is it the belief in Iran that Israel is going to attack again? Meaning, do they just kind of accept, well, we know that they're going to blow off any notion of a truce, and they will gear up with the US's help in doing so?
Yeah, totally. I mean, everyone knows that at some point Israel will restart its attacks against Iran. Israel has never adhered to any ceasefire or truce, even though the what is happening right now is called more like a cessation of aggression than a ceasefire. Because in ceasefire, the two parties like talk, negotiate, and agree on something. Nothing like that has happened. It's just something that happened in, unwritten agreement, and that, okay, for now we'll stop exchange of fire, one who starts, even though they claim that they're defending themselves and they're taking preemptive actions. It's always like, oh, okay, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, oh, maybe tomorrow you want to attack me. So Israel always justifies that. So Iran is ready. I think the Iranian system, the Iranian officials know that Israel just waiting for any moment to take advantage of any opportunity to start its attacks again. But as you have seen, it was Israel who basically begged for a ceasefire,
Yes.
and it was Israel that begged the US to come help it, because if without the US help, Israel would not be able to stand. It's not only actually it's not only the US. There are a lot of Western countries and Arab states that are supporting Israel, and like intercepting missiles, Iranian missiles, or at least trying to intercept Iranian missiles to protect Israel. And which is very sad, especially those in the region. It's such a it's such a humiliation
It
coming from
is.
those states in the US that are basically US puppets, and they are allowing for the genocide that has been going on for more than 2 years in Palestine, and of course the more than 75 years of occupation of the Palestinian lands. And without the US support, without those Arab states support, Israel would not even exist anymore, because we have ships and they were promised a better life. They're living on US taxpayers' money. They're not really working hard for it. It's the US, it's Americans who are paying for that basically. And whenever they feel their life is threatened, and they hear the sirens on a daily basis, they will start leaving the occupied lands. Haaretz published an opinion poll where it said that more than 40% of the settlers are already considering leaving the country forever. So, because when you still, other people have to leave it. You don't really need Iranian missiles to come your way for that colonial project to finish,
Yeah.
even though is helping
They do help.
with
They do help.
bringing that colonial Zionist project in the region closer to.
Yeah, those missiles help tremendously. I mean, yeah, Israel is a permanent victim. It's like, oh my God, that baby, I had to kill it because I was terrified. And they do that constantly. It's one thing for them to starve and kill people who can't defend themselves. I think they're okay with that. They can drink their cappuccino, they can have their sandwich and croissants or whatever, as people effectively get killed, murdered, starved, etc. But the moment that you have missiles coming your way, okay, well, this is different, right? It's like, hey, we didn't sign up for this. We signed up for murder. We didn't sign up to get killed. In which case, they have their second passport and they just go back to their actual country. So those missiles do help tremendously. They didn't move to Israel to live in sewers and bomb shelters. They thought they were going to be able to steal somebody else's land.
Exactly.
From your point of view, though, like, why did Iran stop? From Iran's point of view, I'm curious. I have my own suspicions, but I want to know why, from Iran's point of view, the way it's been discussed, did they stop?
I think one thing that a lot of people might miss on Iran's strategy and like way of engaging in retaliation is that Iran stands true to like really high moral standards. It's not like the US or Israel. To give you an example, when Saddam started its US-backed war against Iran, the invasion of Iran,
Right.
he was funded, armed, and supported by the US and a few European countries, including, for example, Germany. They provided him with chemical weapons that which he used against Iranians, and those towns are still affected by those chemical weapons. And so those in military asked Imam Khomeini if we could, in response, use some sort of a similar weapon to defend ourselves or to retaliate. And he said that's not allowed. That's for the same reason there is a fatwa, which is a religious decree by Ayatollah Khamenei, that says we are not allowed to develop or use nuclear weapons because we have morals. Even when we wanted to attack the US base or Israel, we have warnings. We gave them enough time to evacuate if they wanted, because we just want to show you that if you decide to attack us, we do have the power to defend ourselves and to retaliate. But it depends on how much you want to play with fire. You know, if you we try our best to avoid civilian casualties, and I know there are reports, coming from Israel that Iran attacked civilian areas.
Nonsense.
But that's not true.
No.
That's not true. I mean, there are evidence. I mean, Israel does not allow reporting. This is what Western journalists have been also complaining about. Israel does not allow reporting on military casualties. And that's why they have to just find one stop near a military base that was targeted by Iran very precisely and say that, see, Iran is killing civilians, which even those civilians are settlers that are living on stolen lands. And if you don't want to be attacked, okay, don't attack other countries.
Yeah.
That's a very simple solution. Just don't attack other countries.
Doctor,
You're killing our generals,
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted. I just wanted to say, you already have my look. I am more critical of Iran for not doing that. Meaning, I understand. I agree with you. Iran fought this very differently than what a Western country would have fought this. You guys avoided hospitals. You avoided reprisal attacks on civilian targets. Israel showed no such restraint. They went after generals. They had decapitation strikes. They went after civilians. They went after hospitals. Iran didn't do that.
Exactly. Yes. And that's why, I mean, Iran probably is also, because, we lost many generals. We lost nuclear scientists. We lost civilians. Because the only way Israel can take out those people, our nuclear scientists, is when they are sleeping. Israel can never do that in a battlefield because they're cowards. They cannot really fight a real war. They have to do it in ways that are, when the the other front is sleeping or not in the battlefield. But I think Iran also probably is preparing and renewing, or rearming. I think this gives Iran some time to rearm. And when I have friends who say, why did Iran stop? Why are we not, targeting? Which I understand. I mean, I would love to see more of that. The Zionist baby killers and war criminals, I would love to see them receive a fair punishment, which I don't know what would be fair for the thousands and thousands of the babies and children and innocent women that they have killed. But I always tell them, I don't think we know more than IRGC. IRGC has been fighting these wars and defending us for decades. They know these criminals. They know what they have in hand. And so if they have decided to stop or pause for a while, they have good reasons for that. It's not that they are afraid of getting killed or afraid of, losing the battle or anything. They're definitely preparing for a better response.
To be fair, I don't think, I'll speak for myself as a vulgar American who has a point of view on how wars are fought, because I can only talk about it from our context, the way that we go after countries when we're in a war. If they would have used gas, then gas would have been fair game. If they go after your generals, it's fair game to go after theirs. And it's very possible we would have did it in the very beginning anyway. You guys fought war in a different way that we don't do. And so you may get a lot of Americans that look at that and says, what is Iran doing right now? It's like, what are they doing? And more importantly, why did they stop? And I guess, do you think that part of the reason that you guys stopped is because ultimately you're dealing with two nuclear powers? That you are restrained in how far you can go because of real limits. Those limits being Israel's a nuclear power that showed no issue with murdering 400,000 people. And if they had, let's say, a justification in their own minds to use nukes, they would. And the same thing with the US, that the US, and weirdly enough, I think you have more deterrence with the United States than I do with Israel, because I don't think the US wants 20,000 body bags coming back into the States, in which case Trump will make a theatrical attack and allow Iran to do something similar so both can back away. But for Israel, though, is the part of the reason for the restraint because they are a nuclear power, ultimately, and Iran is not a nuclear power.
Well, I think Iran's strength lies in more than just a nuclear power. Yes, there are a lot of people in Iran, among intellectuals and ordinary people, who argue that this is time for us to reconsider that fatwa, the religious decree that bans the building and using of nuclear weapons, and consider developing ours, because we're in a region where India has nuclear weapons, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, Israel has nuclear weapons, US has military bases everywhere and has nuclear weapons. And it's ludicrous that the only country in Middle East with the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons, and the only country that has actually ever used nuclear weapons against other nations, accuse Iran of maybe having nuclear weapons. It just doesn't make any sense. And it tells you it's not about nuclear program. And I don't think, I think Israel just wants to see the collapse of a political system in Iran and the Balkanization of the country. That's the biggest threat to them. And it's true that Americans don't want another war. They cannot afford engaging in another war and seeing body bags coming home. But for Israel too, it's an existential threat. Iran is 75 times bigger than Israel. The population of Tehran alone is double the size of the entire occupied lands, the population of occupied lands.
Wow.
So Israel knows it cannot win this war without US help. And Israel knows that if Tehran actually decided to level Tel Aviv and Haifa to the ground, it could do it in a day. We just haven't at this point, we don't want to do this, right? So we do have the power. Yes, Israel has no limit in killing people. Actually, like, the only war that they win is killing babies. Just massacring babies in incubators and hens in refugee camps and setting them on fire, attacking aid workers while they're helping others. They can't really win an actual war, because you have, as I said, you have settlers who are living on stolen land with families and origins outside those occupied lands, or not from there. And once they feel threatened, they just want to leave. What's the point of living on those stolen lands? It's not like Iranians. Iranians are from here. We have lived here for thousands of years. We have a civilization that has been going on for centuries and for thousands of years. We do not have another place to go. This is where we are from, and we belong to here, and we want to protect it. But Israelis don't want to protect a stolen land. If they feel unsafe, they just want to go back to the land they belong to. Because what's the point of living on stolen land if you're going to be targeted with missiles on a daily basis?
Exactly.
Right? We don't really need to use all of our missiles to finish that colonial Zionist project there. We just need to use a few of them. So while I understand a lot of people are saying that Iran needs to have nuclear weapons, I'm not sure we actually, at this point, we actually need to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, we do have enough to protect ourselves. And it depends on how, like, for the next steps, how Israel wants to play that game. Because as you mentioned, Israel, it's a, you know, Jewish supremacy. It's a white supremacist colonial project that considers non-Jews and non-whites as less of a human being.
Yeah.
And that makes it that, like, that's totally okay. I mean, even in the religious texts, they say that it's totally okay to kill babies. And to kill the cattle of the enemies and the women's of the enemies. There's like nothing that can stop them from ethnic cleansing and, you know, carrying out genocide. So I'm sure they don't mind killing more Iranians, even though they may claim they do not at all. I mean, and Iranians know that. Iranians, even if they have grievances against their own government, they know that this Zionist entity wants to eliminate them. They don't care about human beings other than the Jewish people that live on the occupied lands. So yes, they don't have any limits, but they also know that it would take Iran just a few, maybe a few hundred more missiles to just finish Israel. But Iran hasn't come to that point yet.
Yeah, but I think what I'm getting at is, let me ask it in a different way. Is the reason that Iran went to 60% enrichment because part of the country wanted nukes, the other part didn't want nukes, and 60% was a compromise? Meaning Iran doesn't quite know what it wants to do yet on the nuclear issue. And there's a conversation in Iran on that issue, even though there's a fatwa against it. As you pointed out, the supreme leader is not entirely supreme, and he can maybe not necessarily be overridden, but he does pay attention to the will of the public, especially if the public is saying we need new. I'll tell you this way. I saw a liberal woman for the first time in Iran, hair flowing in the wind, screaming at the top of her lungs that Iran needs nukes. That is an amazing thing. That woman would have been at a protest 2 years ago, screaming at her government. And right now she is screaming, this government needs nukes and it needs them right now. I'm pointing out that there does seem to be a part of the country that clearly is in the mindset, they have nukes, we need nukes. That's our balance. Otherwise, we're always at a disadvantage in any kind of conflict. You could flatten Haifa, but you can't know Israel's response to doing so, which is, I think, the issue. And I guess that's what I'm asking. Is it that part of the country will feel safer with nuclear weapons, in which case the other part does not? And so you end up with a conversation that takes place with a compromise being the 60% enrichment with the idea of potentially going for, let's say, breakaway speed if need be. Does it make sense? I hope I'm asking that right. I'm trying to get at this notion of whether or not there's a conversation in Iran about this, which is why they end up with this kind of policy.
Well, I understand your point. The thing is, first of all, I'm not an expert on religious fatwas and decrees, and not an expert on nuclear, program or activities. But what I do know is that, unlike Israel, for us, like, winning a war does not mean being able to kill more. It does not mean being able to ethnic cleanse other people or carry out a genocide against them. For us, winning a war means to not be oppressive, not to eliminate innocent lives. And I should give you an example, especially during these days, because the vast majority of Iranians are Shia Muslims.
Right.
And in Islam, we have Imam Hussein as our role model. Saturday and Sunday is our holiday where we commemorate the sacrifice that Imam Hussein made. And in that war, he, with his very small army, rose up against an oppressive tyranny. And if from a military viewpoint, he did not win that war, but from a human and divine point, he did win that war because he did not do all the oppressive measures and killings that his enemy did. That's the way we win the wars. We win the hearts, right? We win the truth. We want to stay true to our values. It does not, yes, the military part, having a strategy, having the capabilities to defend ourselves against our enemies is a very important part. We have worked so hard to develop the technologies, to develop the capabilities to win those wars. But that does not mean we will compromise our values. Now, developing nuclear weapon, whether that compromises our values or not, this is not something that I can say because I'm not an expert on that. They have to consider that. They have to study that and see, okay, based on the situation and the context that we have, no, it's necessary or we are allowed to have it. And then you start considering that. But Iran, what I think Iran should do and is doing is being prepared to develop nuclear weapons if we need to have them at some point.
Yeah.
If the leader of the revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, also made it clear that if we wanted to have nuclear weapons, we would not wait for US permission to have it. We would not wait for UN permission to have it. That's not how Iran acts. We would have it a long time ago. So far, we had not wanted to have it. Now maybe the situation changes because Islamic jurisprudence and scholarship is very dynamic and it changes based on the needs and requirements of the country's situations and time.
Right.
So yes, there is a possibility that fatwa could change, but so far it hasn't changed, and people are considering that, people are pushing for that. But I think it's important to remember winning war, like for example, if I ask you, has Israel won in Gaza? Is killing thousands of children, being able to kill thousands of children, winning the war? I don't think that's winning the war.
It kind of depends.
And
let me explain what I mean. Wars are one dependent on your objective in that war. And Israel's objective is to kill as many people as possible. It wants to evacuate all of those people from that territory so they can steal the land. And so for them, killing is just a means to an end to accomplish that objective. If you ask me, have they accomplished it yet? No. No, they haven't.
Yeah, but so, I mean, even from that point of view, yes, they have not achieved it fully. But even if you say that, yes, they achieved on eliminating a nation, it's like saying Hitler achieved its objective, which was like killing people in gas chambers, etc., whatever. I would never call Hitler a winner of the game. Like the same way I would never call Israel the winner of the game, because at the end of the day, killing innocent people and, as I said, ethnic cleansing them is not winning the war. But yes, I think Iran. I mean, I would say I welcome the idea. I really like the idea that the society is so dynamic. Muslim scholars, politicians, decision makers, leaders, everyone is open to studying it and seeing if that is like a potential that we could have without having compromised our values. Because the same with Imam Hussein and the army that fought against him. People would have probably said, "Oh, you're going to lose this war because you have an army of 72 people, and they don't mind killing your babies," which they killed. I mean, the similarities and the inspiration that we get from Imam Hussein's story is just amazing, because the enemy also killed Imam Hussein's 6-month-old baby. That's exactly what Israel is doing. And I mean, at that point, everyone thought, okay, Imam Hussein lost the war, but his legacy remained, and history is judging who the actual winner is, because his legacy as someone who rose up against Tyrannian oppression continued for centuries, and still people are inspired by him. So this is important, to stand on the right side of the history, as our leader has also said. We want to stand on the right side of this history. It does not mean that we will necessarily win the the military war, which I'm sure Iran can do, because so far it has displayed to the world that Iran is totally capable of doing that. Yes, but that's not our objective. Our objective is to stay true to our values. That's what we want to be. We want to continue a human legacy. We want to be remembered in history as human beings who had lofty values that they uphold, and they did not mind giving their lives for those values, for those human values.
Dr. Sadeqi, 2 points. I don't want to give this impression that I'm saying murdering women and children is a win. I'm saying that killing an object, like if we're playing chess, the objective is to take the king, and you kill pieces as a means to an end. It's not the goal. The goal is to take the king. And I'm saying military objectives are determined by what you're trying to accomplish. And so when Iran is fighting Israel and they are going after military centers, they're going after Mossad places, the financial district. Okay, that's their objective, to take down the ability for the government to function. That is a win. You were able to win by accomplishing your objectives. In Israel's case in Gaza, they don't have military objectives in the traditional sense. They're just there to kill. It would be like Hitler in gas chambers. It's like Hitler's, I want to kill as many Jews as possible. Okay, that's what his objective was. Now, he had the secondary objective of taking over all of Europe, but from the standpoint of what he wanted to do to Jews, it was just kill all of them. I'm saying that is where Israel is today with Gaza. Their objective is only to kill as many as possible in the most horrific ways as possible. They have no military objective beyond doing that in Gaza. For Syria, they might have had a different objective, or Hezbollah, they might have had military objectives, but not for Gaza. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to get this impression that I'm like that monster said that Israel was accomplishing the objective by killing babies. That is not.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
In the second point.
Yeah, I understand what you say.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about Iran's objectives. Nuclear weapons are not meant to be used. They're meant to be shown, if that makes sense. If you have to use it, something's gone horribly wrong. Usually it's a threat that you have the ability to, like, for example, North Korea would never use a nuke unless it had to use a nuke. But all things being equal, it would never have to use a nuke because everybody knows it has nukes. And so when people are bringing up the nuclear conversation about Iran, they're not talking about Iran using them. They're talking about Iran having them. There's a difference.
Yes.
I just want to make that clear. It's not like people are saying Iran should get a nuke and use it. No. No.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
okay.
Even inside Iran, some people have been pointing out that the fatwa bans the using of nuclear weapons,
Right.
not the making of it. Which is, that's, as I said, I'm not an expert on religious decrees and stuff, and I can't really judge that. And I think yes, Iran should consider having a stronger deterrence against the nuclear powers who are war criminals too, and don't mind eliminating the Iranian nation. I'm not saying that I don't have an opinion on whether Iran should definitely have nuclear weapons or not, because I think I'm not an expert to say that.
That's perfect.
But that does not mean, that Iran doesn't. I would say, yes, I hate nuclear weapons and I don't think the world needs them. But if there are powers or if there are countries that already have them, countries that have already used them, like the US, countries that have the largest stockpile and have a record of committing war crimes and killing people, and Iran, which does not have any record of any of those things, should have the right to have it too. So the world should not decide for us whether we have the right to have nuclear weapons or not.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah, I
that's
totally know what you
important
mean.
in the conversation.
It is
Yeah,
outrageous.
so US is not going to tell us. Yeah, US is not going to tell us we should have it or not. The UN even, because after what IAEA has done, the
Yes.
UN watchdog, they're in no position to tell other nations who has the right to have it or not, because you have Israel with the largest nuclear weapons stockpile, and not a member of NPT, and carrying out a genocide and being totally, enjoying a total impunity in doing whatever it wants. So if I have considerations whether Iran should or should not have nuclear weapons, it has nothing to do with what the US says, what the UN says.
Yes.
It is a decision made by Iranian people and Iranian leaders.
Look,
we decide what is better for us. If we decide that this is okay to have nuclear weapons, and because we want to have full deterrence against war criminals, then we should have it. Nothing can stop us.
in full transparency, I think it is astonishing that the U.S. is poking its nose in internal business of Iran on this issue. And I don't believe it has anything to do with nukes from the U.S.'s standpoint.
It does not.
We have knocked over Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. We have used whatever excuse necessary to do it. And Iran is just the next country that it seeks to do the same thing to. So one last question before I let you go that just came to mind. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I would tell you I want Iran to succeed in this, which is why some of these questions may be coming from angst. I know my country. I lived here my entire life. And even I think you can tell just in the framing of the questions that I'm asking you, it is ingrained in me in the way that I think about this stuff. Like you would never hear me say, I want to lose the right way because the point is to win. So some of the stuff is culture different. So, it's not meant to be critical. Like it's just the way my mind works. It's the way I think.
Yeah, I totally understand. That's the view a lot of people in Iran share. So you're not the only one in the world and in Iran share the same view as you. But I personally would refrain from having a strong opinion whether we should have it or should not have it. Although I totally understand where the desire or the demand to have them comes from. I totally understand that. And I think that makes sense.
And by the way,
you know what I mean? But I personally wouldn't say have it.
Yeah, that's secondary to nukes. Like that mindset, secondary to nukes. Whether you have them or you don't have them, I want you to win. I want you to succeed in this. In order for
I think the world wants to, right?
Yeah. Well, in order for us to get this kind of better world, you kind of need Iran to exist. And I guess that brings me to the last question. This notion of Russia and China. What does Iran see itself in the global order with Russia and China, especially considering you have the US seemingly doing everything in its power to maintain supremacy? And just to give context to that, you have us trying to go after Russia and Ukraine. You have us, I would strongly suggest, pushing the South Korean government to try to effectively overthrow and create a dictatorship in South Korea. You have what seems to be a color revolution in Serbia, a color revolution that tried to take place in Georgia. The thing with Azerbaijan right now is just mind-blowing. I don't know what the hell is going on in Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
They seem to be working with Israelis in one sense and working against the Russian interests in another sense, both of which Iran and Russia surround Azerbaijan. So it's amazing to me that they're taking this point of view. But the empire, or I call it that, this notion of the main maintenance of hegemonic control, they seem to be taking action in order to subvert this idea of a new world coming into fruition, like a multipolar world coming into fruition. Whether that world is good or bad, clearly we don't want to come to fruition. We want to maintain unipolarity or unipolar power. How does Iran see itself in this? Does it see itself in association with Russia and China? Does it see itself alone? How does it view itself in this kind of world dynamic?
Well, I think we have had strategic partnership with both China and Russia. There have been cases that they have come to help or have worked together with Iran. Russia and China, the way they have been practicing power and the dynamics of political relations with these two powers has been very different from that of the U.S.
Yes.
U.S. usually exercises power from a domineering point, from a hegemonic point, which one seeks to humiliate and subjugate the other nations. So far, that has not been the case with how China and Russia have exercised power.
Right.
But whether or not we could rely on them when it comes to a third world war, or which involves the U.S., I think Iran understands that we cannot rely on anybody outside fully.
I see.
Yes, Russia, China, North Korea might want to repel U.S. unipolarity, might want to, help bring this current domineering world order to an end and get their places in a more, kind of more equal or more multipolar world order. But that does not mean that they're totally reliable when it comes to defending ourselves. Yes, China and Russia have in some cases helped us, and we might refer to them for maybe obtaining some defense capabilities or technological know-hows. But at the end of the day, we have learned to be as self-reliant as we can. And that's what we're practicing. But at the end of the day, I mean, the entire world needs each other. We all need each other. We have to help each other. But you need, especially when it comes to your defense capabilities, I think self-reliance is the only option, the only thing that decreases your vulnerability and makes you a stronger nation.
Totally understand. Doctor, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. There were a few hiccups in the beginning, but everything panned out, everything cleared up. Even the signal cleared up. So no, I greatly appreciate you coming on for this. Dr. Satateh Sadeqi, I butchered the first name, Satateh Sadeqi.
Yes, pretty good. Yes.
Okay, I'll call that a win, and I'll run with that. She is an assistant professor at the Faculty for World Studies, University of Tehran, where she earned her PhD in North American Studies. Her research focuses on the United States-Iran relations, media, narratives, and political communication. She actively bridges academia and public discourse as a co-host of, I think it's called Twice Told Tales podcast, exploring geopolitical dynamics affecting Iran, a frequent speaker and moderator for the international conferences. Dr. Sadeqi is committed to fostering dialogue on Iran's global role. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
You have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. So we have come to the end of that call. Let me flip this back over. Shout out to her. She has my appreciation for joining me. I got to be honest, I felt like I was badgering her, even though I wasn't trying to badger her. So I haven't seen the chat. I don't know if the chat was screaming at me for badgering her. That wasn't my objective. I swear to God, it wasn't. It felt that way as I'm talking to her. Maracas, you're a prick. Oh God, the chat is fighting. What is it? She is graceful. She is very graceful. She's very attractive. Well, I didn't mean it that way. I'm a guy. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant she's very good at explaining. How can I say it? She didn't want to come down hard on the issue of nukes, which is why I felt like I was badgering her, even though there wasn't Shamar, the list. I don't know what that means. Oh, you're on the list. Oh, okay. I didn't want to badger on the issue of nukes. I imagine that a lot of people in the world are screaming that at Iran right now, especially people like me. Sarah Bils is going to be on the show later. And so she may, we've been very angsty about Iran because we want it to survive. In order to have any notion of a polarity, I think Iran needs to be there, and it needs to be intact in a way that many of the other governments aren't. And just taking out multipolarity just on a very human level, what we've done to these countries in the Middle East has been utterly grotesque. I mean, for God's sake, we're assisting in a genocide as we speak. So no, I do not want a civilizational state to undergo what many of these countries are going now. Do you realize right now in Syria, they are doing the exact same thing that ISIS was doing before and taking down monuments and statues? They're literally doing it. No, you're not going to hear anything about it in Western media, even though when it was ISIS proper and not Donald Trump's buddy ISIS, they would show it in media circles all the time. I do not want that happening to Iran. I do not want those people to undergo it, nor do I want those people to go through it. My former producer, his family was Syrian Lebanese. And when the Syrian government fell, I hit him up almost immediately asking him, was his family all right? And he pointed out how freaked out they were because they had every expectation to believe that kill squads and goons and thugs with beards was going to come to the various locations to ethnically cleanse the regions. And they did. And they did. So, yes, I have concerns. Those concerns do not mean you need nukes. And as I pointed out, nukes are not meant to be used. They're meant to be displayed. It's kind of a threat. But if the threat is used, something is going monstrously wrong. Would they be in war if they had nukes? And I think that's an interesting question. Meaning, would Israel have attacked? Would the US be so brazen to attack if Iran had nuclear weapons? I don't know. I don't know. But you can imagine the threat level radically increases for any attack that you make on them the moment that they have nukes. Because you could find yourself in a nuclear conflict. And this idea that they have to be somewhere restrained goes out the window. And, meaning that restraint goes both ways. That's not a one-way thing anymore. So no, I'm not trying to push her to say, yes, we need nukes. That wasn't my objective, even though it felt that way because I felt like with the conversation leave. I was trying to more so get to this assessment of whether or not there's this conversation in Iran on it, and the answer was yes. And if that was the reason for the 60%, because 60% feels weird. It's like we're gonna have 60% just in case. It's like, but you have a fatwa against it. So what do you mean just in case? Fatwa may change. I was like, okay, fair enough, right? Fair enough. She's very cool people. I really like her. And hopefully she would come back. Hopefully she didn't feel badgered. Yeah, hopefully she didn't feel badgered. Hopefully she would be perfectly willing to join again. Ted Rall is coming up shortly. Professor Wolff is going to be on after Ted Rall, and then Sarah Bils is going to be on after Professor Wolff. So yes, a full show today. I do not know if I'm doing a show on the 4th of July. And I know the last time I said that, I sat there and still did a 4-hour show. Take it with a grain of salt, right? Let's go to chat real quick. Let's see who we have. We have Wanda USA, Dirty Laundry, Jamal's Brilliant Chat, and MAGA 1 versus Trump. Too big to pass bill. What? Jamal's Brilliant Chat. MAGA 1 versus Trump's too big to pass bill. I don't know if it's going to pass. I think it's probably going to pass. Wandy, I could be wrong. I think the bill is going to pass. I think it's going to pass. MAGA wants bill passed individually to get rid of bills that aren't MAGA versus MEGA. Oh, I see. Well, I would tell you that that's not going to happen because if they did that, it wouldn't get passed. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If that bill gets passed, it's going to get passed in its full form, the way it is. Mark my words. I could be wrong. Mark my words. What is this? Oda, John, Trudell. It will, because it's horrible, so it will pass. Yes. Yes. Almost as a law. Yes. Cherie, the bill will pass. Yes. Look, it's one thing if they had 50 people that were against it, right? That's not where they are. They're at 4. And Thomas Massey has said that his vote will depend upon whether or not the bill passes. So that 4 is really 3, because if you get the other 3, Massey will flip his vote. So yeah, that bill is going to pass. Now, the catch, and what's interesting to me, is that the Republicans were like, the cuts to Medicaid will have consequences. So a Republican Party that doesn't believe in any of this stuff, they're okay with people dying on the street without healthcare, education, or anything like that. Even they are like, there are going to be consequences for us cutting $1 trillion out of Medicaid when people aren't able to get assistance. Maybe. I don't know. I honestly don't know anymore. You would think, but I don't know. I mean, I don't get the sense that Americans seemingly don't care about basic stuff of civilization. They just don't seem to. Like, you would think that people would care about having universal health care. When it's cheaper, it tends to be a better system. They don't seem to care about that. They don't care if people die without health care. It's very bizarre. You would think people would care about having Medicare to be intact or Social Security to be intact, considering it's something that we have very little social services in this country in general, especially as compared to somewhere like Europe. But I don't know if they're going to flip out about, look, the reason why I'm saying this, I watched Elon Musk, richest man on the planet, go after Social Security after Trump said they're not going to go after Social Security. And they was like, well, it's just waste, fraud, and abuse. And you think to yourself, is the public really that stupid to believe that? I didn't see any protests. I didn't see anybody burning shit down. And if I don't see those things, then I have to come to the assessment that the public accepts it. When they were going after the Department of Education, again, I didn't see anybody protesting. I didn't see anybody burning shit down. So I'll have to come to the assessment that the public accepts it. I guess what I'm saying is, you have people who are out there protesting immigration. Okay, so they care about immigrants. Great. Great. And I'm not trying to be an asshole. I do care about those things. But I also care, and probably care more, about things that are pertinent to Americans internally to the country. Healthcare, education, increased wages, etc. Those are the things I care about more. And those are things that people don't seem to care about. They seem to be alone and care about those things. Infrastructure, something else. High-speed rail, something else. Well, we don't have those things. Airlines, trash. Our train system, I'm telling you, in comparison to everywhere else in the world, is trash. So it's like, do we as Americans just not care about those things? I don't have an answer for that question. I just don't have an answer for it. It's very bizarre. It is very, very bizarre. Oh, we have more chats. I'm sorry. This is Frank Friel. Jamal Barack said everyone should give you super chats. Nope, you're well in Malaysia. Well, thank you, Frank Friel. I appreciate that. Hope you're well. Yes, I am. Yes, I am actually. I can't get it out. I am actually. I'm tired. I'm dragging ass this morning. I had treatment and all today, so it was a long day. But so far, so good. I am a better person when I travel. I think it's for lack of things, weirdly enough. This sounds horrible, but I think it's probably true. And my ex-girlfriend says something like this, so it's not what she says that's correct, but on certain things, she may hit it home. She's like, you have very little self-control. With the caveat If I'm put in a situation where I don't have those things, I'm perfectly fine without them. I just putter along, no issue. Don't think twice about it. When you go back to Richmond, you know where everything is. I know where Captain D's is. I know where Caputo's is. Oh, I love Caputo's. You know where your favorite weed spots are because marijuana is legal in Richmond. You know all that stuff is, right? And so you indulge even when you shouldn't be indulging because you just lost a job and you are barely making ends meet. It becomes that. When you say, okay, this is not working, I need to find a X factor solution to find balance. And you go to Albania to do so. Okay, well, it's different. It's weird. Like you don't have any of those things that you're accustomed to. And for the longest time, I didn't even have a basic diet. Like my first month was rough. By the time you get to Malaysia, you become far more accustomed. You exercise more because you walk to everywhere you go because you don't have a car. There is no pot. Your diet is pretty basic. And you work constantly. And that was kind of the other point of the trip was you're isolated yourself and you do your job, you work. So far this has worked out fine. That has worked out well. So I can't complain. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. Wandy, if the bill passed, we would get rid of mega Congress midterm. You think so? Do you know that Donald Trump's approval rating is higher than pretty much any other Republican president? I shit you not. So even though people may hate the bill, the person who wrote the bill and is pushing for the bill to go through, they seem to be giving him a pass. How do you explain that? Like, how do you reconcile that? Right. I could show you the clip where the guy was going through and saying Donald Trump is one of the most popular Republican presidents we've ever had. And you think to yourself, how? How does that work? And then you get MAGA who's running around screaming, telling people that Donald Trump has been settling wars. It's nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Yeah, complete and utter nonsense. I'm amazed by the dichotomy, that's all. In one sense, most popular president. In the other sense, underwater, meaning the bill, by 50 points. How do you reconcile these things, considering that president who's apparently popular is the one that's pushing for that bill? I don't know how to reconcile it. That's what I mean. It doesn't make sense, Wendy. It does not make sense. Pink Rose, yeah, they're going to pass the bill. A lot of people will die. Yes, a lot of people will die and lose their jobs. And Democrats want that to happen so they can have a chance to win the next election evil. Yes. Think back to the abortion debate. Are you telling me that you don't think the Democrats were praying to Jesus at 3 a.m. that Republicans overreach? And when Republicans overreach, they were chest thumping each other in the hallways. Thank you. We have something to run on. Now, Joe Biden took that thing to run on as if it was some kind of endorsement, not endorsement of his plan. That was during Joe Biden, right? No, it had to be during Joe Biden. Yeah, he took that as an endorsement of his plan when the Supreme Court gutted abortion. Well, as we kept saying, that has nothing to do with your plan, bro. It's everything to do with many of those states that have referendums and whatnot, electing Democrats as a repudiation of what the Supreme Court was effectively doing. Well, we'll see. I mean, Pink Rose, be careful what they wish for. Again, if Donald Trump is an extremely popular president, and I'm putting extreme in quotes, do they associate what happens with the bill with him? Also, keep in mind, Trump is only going to be in office for 3 years. And do we know if the effects of that bill will be felt by the midterms? I don't know. I honestly, I don't have an answer for that. Also, if 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash, well, millionaires and billionaires are going to have a hell of a lot more cash in order to spend on those campaigns as a reward for getting them massive tax breaks. So I don't know, Pink Rose. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. Noble Brown, thanks a lot for the show again. Forgot to put this on, what is it? Is this forced message on the fourth message? On the first message? On the first message. Well, thank you, Noble Brown. I like that name, by the way. Noble Brown. Badass name. I see my man in the background, the one, the only, the magnificent Ted Rall. Ted Rall is a political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. He is also host of TMI, Too Much Information, with the one, the great, the beautiful, the lovely, who glides when she walks, Manila Chan. I'm trying to think of other adjectives to add to that. But also with John Kiriakou, another fantastic guest. What is the name of that show for the life of me? I can never deprogrammed. And by the way, John can remember the name either. So it's not just me. It's not just me. John sat here for he was like, oh, I can't think of the name. I was like, John, it's your show.
John,
like, what are you doing, man? It's your show.
John has more shows going on than P. Diddy has freak off parties. But yeah,
he has many of them, and he may be going home. He may be. Yeah, not are you
quickly.
Are you shocked by that verdict?
No, I saw that one coming for sure.
Did you?
Honestly, I think the jury was mean. I mean, I think the jury should have nullified on the two-man act, counts. I mean, I hate it personally when prosecutors overcharge.
So do I.
It pisses me off, and if I was on a jury, I would penalize that. My mother was the same way when she was on a jury. She nullified a jury for that exact reason. It was like the person was guilty of a minor offense, and they just didn't charge them with that. They went too far. So, I mean, certainly there was no evidence presented of human trafficking. I mean, that just didn't happen. Basically, they convicted him of being, an abusive shithead boyfriend.
Yes.
Fact, wouldn't want my daughter to hang out with him. But I'm sorry, but that's not human trafficking. I mean, to me, human trafficking is like white slavery, right? Like you're bringing people across the border, you're pimping them out. He wasn't doing any of that. So he and the Mann Act is a stupid law that ought to be repealed. First of all, prostitution should be legal, but also, you bringing sex workers across state lines. Well, you live in, say, Long Island or New York, where Diddy lived. It's like, so you get hookers from New Jersey. Okay, well, so you're guilty of the Mann Act violation. It's stupid. And so he faces, 20 years in prison, 10 years for each. That's not going to happen. He's going to get 3 years, minus time served. He'll be out in 2, good behavior. And, and we live in a world where that's oh, okay, that's not so bad. That's ridiculous. It's 2 years. He's already been years in prison. I mean, in this squalid, foul environment, it's a whole thing. I mean, so, the fact is we're in a world where it could have been worse, but I mean,
it shouldn't have even been this bad.
But it's an obscenity. And I think, the way they went after him has so many overtones of let's nail the rich black guy. Let's see if we can do that. And all it proves is, like with OJ, you can get justice in an American courtroom somewhat if you're rich, if you're black.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the results, but I mean, he should have walked free.
Oh man, this is the tough one for me. So let me take it out by the elements first. First, can you guys hear Ted?
By the way, if it had been 30 years in prison and 30 days in the lockup to make him think, just don't be a dick, I could live with that.
Yes, I can live with that. I think my issue is more than anything else. It's like beating Cassie was stunning to watch. And on abuse alone, I would have put his ass in a cage. Meaning nothing else a part of it, right?
Right, and
Maybe
they could have charged him with that.
But they didn't want to do that.
And
they wanted to have racketeering charges to basically to be able to get anything to stick on them. I agree with you about the prostitution. Prostitution should be legal. The notion that you can't control your own body is outrageous. Like it's almost like the state is trying to control women's and men's bodies in regards to who they sell.
It's also a law that doesn't. It's like prohibition. It just doesn't work because people are going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So you're basically fundamentally making a human behavior illegal.
Also, it is very weird. I mean, because how do you? It's like, is porn? How is porn not prostitution?
Porn is prostitution.
Yeah, but they don't call it prostitution.
Right.
It's very bizarre.
You're acting, right?
Yeah.
But of course, porn is right. What is it? You receive money in exchange for having sex. I would argue that porn is more. It's a harder job because not only do you have sex for money, but on top of that, you are seen by potentially millions of people. So it's not even like this act that you do. Most people do privately. On top of that, you're exposing
but that just
yourself,
makes you a star.
hard.
That just makes you a star.
Right. I mean, personally, I mean, if I had the body and the looks for it, I would love to be. I'm an exhibitionist. I would love it, but I don't think it works for everybody.
I got it. That is a hard job. Would you date a woman who was a porn star?
Would I date a porn star? 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, and I would. Yeah. No, I don't think I have. I don't believe that there's anything shameful or immoral or wrong with being a porn star at all.
What about the woman who slept with those 100 guys or 1,000 guys in 24 hours?
I would. I mean, look, if I'm French, so I feel like when people find love, they're lucky, and you take love where you find it. So if I loved her, yes, absolutely. I would be concerned physically for her because, and obviously psychologically, because that's pretty extreme. But lots of people who aren't porn stars engage in some pretty extreme behavior. Like, it's shocking how common BDSM is, how many people are into that. And to me, like, you fuck 1,000 dudes. I mean, obviously, you're gonna have. There's some physical issues there that you have to be concerned about. So
see, I don't see anything wrong with BDSM. I
don't see anything wrong with it either. What I'm saying, and again,
I get the logic of it in some way.
And I have dated people.
Yeah.
I'm not into it at all. It bores me. But I have dated people who liked it. But
they forced you? Is that what you just said? They forced you?
No. I have dated girls who wanted to be hit and otherwise stuff like that, peed upon. Not my thing. But again, I don't have. It's like, so what? I don't have to do it. It's no big deal. But I would totally. Would you date a
I don't know. I don't know if I have the self-esteem to date a porn star. It would wreck me.
Oh, why? Because you'd worry that like you were being compared to.
I mean,
sexually.
It's not just the comparison. I mean, she's getting railed by dudes on a daily basis for a job.
Yeah, I mean, but we're guys. We know the difference between fucking and making love.
I don't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, well, that's not true. That's not entirely true. I'm lying if I say that.
Because sometimes, even with your partner who you adore and love, sometimes you're fucking and sometimes you're not making love.
No, that's fair.
Freud said you have to objectify your sex. Doesn't work really if you don't have some distance between. That's Freud's theory, and I think he was right about this. That like incest doesn't work in society, not for moral reasons, but because you're too close to your like sibling, let's say, and so you don't traverse sexually. You don't traverse a distance to get where you're closing mystery. There has to be space, right? That's why you shouldn't like live with like your wife and take a shit in front of her with the door open.
Jesus Christ.
You know what I mean?
Jesus Christ. The audience is like, what the hell are they talking about right now?
What are they talking about? No, but I think, look, honestly, this is a book that I've been thinking about writing for like 20 years. That there's no political liberation without sexual liberation, and I've just been trying to figure out how to make that book work. And like, you know, because it's a tough task. I think you only get one shot at writing a book like that, and it has to be perfect. But I really believe it. I mean, I think all this shame stuff, like she, you know, my wife, like, you know, I knew a couple who were both porn stars, we were friends, and you know, they were the most normal people in the world, and like, it's just work. I mean, it's no different. Like, would you date a masseuse, right? Someone who's just a non-sexual masseuse. Like,
just be clear, I don't put shame on it.
She's like, yeah,
I don't put shame on it. I don't. Look, they're just doing the job. Society does. I agree.
But there's also the like, oh, she's been being railed by other guys. It's like, well, that doesn't make you a cuck. It actually makes you like, well, it might make you a cuck if you're into being a cuck, but it makes you like, actually, like, this girl fucks millions of guys, but I'm the one she comes home to. I'm the one she likes best. You know, you can look at
that is a point of view. That is a point of view. That is a point of view. I don't know if my ego could take that. I think it would screw with me. I know me, it would screw with me. It's not even a shame issue, by the way. It's not like, like I used to have this
but
argument.
In terms of telling like your mom, oh, by the way, so what does she do? She's so nice. Well, she's an adult actress.
It's not even my mom thing. Like, look, the conversations I have with my mom, you'd be stunned. You'd be stunned.
Because my mom and I had that kind of relationship, and I miss it terribly. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell her there are things my mom is like, God, I wish you just wouldn't tell me this stuff. I
told my mom stuff, and you'd be like, what? You told her what? And she was totally like, oh, that's great. You know. Yeah.
So it's not
all about it.
Right. So it's not that part. It's not the mom thing. It's the me thing. It's whether or not I can tolerate. Yeah, I don't think I can tolerate that. It's not, and again, it's not shame. It's not that I think bad of her. It's not that I think she's doing something inherently wrong. It's none of that stuff. It's my own ego. My own ego would not be able to tolerate it. Part of it is, you're right. It's like, okay, these guys are built like gods. So there's that.
Have you ever seen Ron Jeremy?
He is a rando. He is a random anomaly.
Sub-rando.
Jeremy is an anomaly. Many of these guys are built like gods, right?
Some, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can tolerate. I don't know if I can tolerate it. We've gotten to a weird spot. I'm sorry. That's my fault. That's totally my fault. I asked the question. Right. Let's talk about the big beautiful bill. Or the big grotesque looking thing that Donald Trump is trying to find. Yeah. That bill is going to gut Medicaid by $1 trillion. It's going to gut SNAP benefits. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of people losing their jobs in the healthcare field for obvious reasons. If you gut funding mechanism to those hospitals, then they're not going to get paid. And so you have to fire those workers, right? And same thing with SNAP benefits. And Trump is trying to pass this off as if, hey, it's a massive tax cut. It is a massive tax cut if you are rich. If you are poor, you are losing money, especially when you take into account the SNAP benefits that are taken away and the Medicaid. And of course, it went after Social Security even before they started this tax plan. Will there be consequences for this?
Maybe. So my understanding is from the reporting I've been following is that the cuts aren't going to kick in until after next year's midterm elections. So, so like basically whatever consequences are going to become clear, probably going to hit in 27 and 28. It'll affect the presidential election for sure. But, you know, with Donald Trump, all things are about him. He won't care by then. He'll be on the way out anyway. So he'll leave the Republican Party to deal with holding the bag, right? I'm 61. I'm having flashbacks of, you know, Ronald Reagan and the 1981 notorious October 1st, 1981 federal budget, where he gutted what we then knew considered to be the social safety net. It never came back, by the way. Clinton Obama, Biden, they never made a move to restore it. Student loans, student grants never came back really the way they were. Student loans never came back the way they were. The welfare state never recovered, and it's it's all been downhill. So this is that again. It's the mean, old-fashioned Republican Party, where it does provide Democrats with a very easy to understand narrative. And even with their incompetent delivery style, they should be able to figure this out and transmit it to the public. They're just going to say, look, they cut taxes on the rich. You're not any better off than you were before. And now they're cutting your shit and your kid's sick and you can't go to the doctor. That's all super easy to understand. People will get it. The Republicans will be tarnished with that brush. The part that's weird to me is that Trump was so disciplined in a way that he's not normally disciplined about anything, but he was so disciplined on the issue of financial issues. We're gonna make prices lower. We're gonna make it so your life is a little more affordable. You can buy gas and eggs and so on. He hasn't done anything at all. There's no policies that will do those things here,
right.
At all. Even if they work great, the most that they're going to do is stimulate maybe some additional capital investment. I'm skeptical, but let's just say that works. That still is not going to make you able to pay your rent. So it's like the whole thing is this is old-fashioned republicanism. It's certainly, they're handing the Democrats a huge opportunity that it'll be hard even for the Democrats to fuck up in 2028.
Are you sure about that? Because going to what you noted about Ronald Reagan, as you pointed out, it's not like Bill Clinton got in and then went back to what it was.
Nope.
He just moved forward, basically stayed still. And then the next Republican gets in, George Bush.
Oh, it's never come. This stuff's not coming back. Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, in terms of the consequences, will the public punish the Republican Party for this? At some point, yeah, they will. It's not going to benefit the public to punish the Republican Party and put the Democrats in. All it'll do is just lead to some Democratic pickups. That's the consequence. It's not going to be, cities burning, which is what it ought to be. But that's not going to happen.
See, that's what frustrates me, because it should be the city is burning.
Agreed.
And maybe if they were worried about the city burning down, they wouldn't do this.
Right. No, it's pretty brazen. Also, I would say the other danger here is it really risks fracturing the Republican coalition between the populist MAGA America First movement that Trump spearheaded and took over from the Tea Party, and the corporate country club Republicans. This is country club corporate republicanism winning again. Right. Massive deficit spending for tax cuts for the rich, gutting social welfare programs that affect people who are desperately poor, particularly, ironically, more than anywhere else in Republican states.
Yes.
So it's gross. It's really gross. And they're not even pretending, right? I was really expecting to see a sweetener or two in there for the populists. There ain't nothing in there.
Nope. No tax on tips ish. Even the no tax on tips thing, they have it. Yeah, exactly. They put in, there's so many caveats around that thing that people won't get those tax cuts back in the first place, because many people who
no tax on overtime.
Exactly. And to make it even worse, of course, you're going to get the rich using the no tax on tips thing as a way of getting money back for themselves.
Right. That is correct. Yeah.
So no, he didn't feel like he needed to give the sweetener. This feels different though. It feels like they're swinging for the rafters.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like we have nothing to lose. There will be no consequence. It's almost like if this is the very
It's not
end.
that there's nothing to lose. It's that now, this is what happens when you have you
Height of
feel
power.
you hold all the cards and you have all the power, right? You've got all the courts, you've got the courts, the legislative branch, the White House. You have a compliant press. You have, Democrats are docile. No one's going to stop you. The public is docile. I mean, what passes for demonstrations is, we get together for a little polite No Kings rally every 3 weeks. We all show up with our special hats and walk around and talk about how Trump shouldn't be a king. We make sure we show up on days when all the federal offices are closed so we don't inconvenience anyone. God forbid we should do that. We all agree to be peaceful. We have our own peace police, make sure that no one rambunctious in our own crowd goes after the cops. And then we go home. It's all like performative. I mean, so if you and I are the president and vice president, Jamal, like under those circumstances, sure, it would be tempted to be like, fuck it, $50 an hour minimum wage, like, socialized medicine, all doctors become state employees, college is free for everybody, woo! And like we would just do whatever the fuck we want, right? And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's dangerous. It's dangerous to do that.
This gets to one of my audience members because you answered her question. She says, the fuck. I think that's what she's trying to say. The fuck, y'all sound like y'all are anarchists. And Alexandra Black, here's the thing. None of this stuff is real. That the political system that you have on some level, if they believe they can do whatever they want, just like what Ted Rall is pointing out for the Trump administration, then they do whatever they want. And the only pushback that you have about that are protests, and protests are threats by definition. They're meant to be threats of potentially, if you keep effing up, we will get worse. We will get worse. But the catch is when you defend those protests, the government does whatever it wants. That's the rub. That's the catch. They don't like to say it. But
I mean, what I've always said is like, so, people, we always on the left have these discussions about violence versus nonviolence, right? And so most protests are, in most countries, nonviolent most of the time. And that's great. And nonviolence is a very powerful tool. But I've always argued that nonviolence without a credible threat of violence is useless. And so, like, just the fact, I mean, protests as we know them originated in walled cities, like in the Middle Ages and in ancient times. And people, so whenever you had a crowd of people, hundreds, thousands, walking around, all pissed off and screaming about the feudal lord or now the government, that the feudal lord looked out the window and thought, shit. Like, these fuckers, first of all, back then there was no potable water, so they were drinking beer all day. And they're a little bit, they're spicy. And then they're like, at some point they could set fire to my whole walled city and I lose everything, right? I would hate that. I love my walled city. Listen, I own it. And it's like, so then like, all right, throw them some bones, give the peasants something to make them go away. So they don't have to actually set fire to the book, but it has to happen sometimes, because if it never happens ever, then like, feudal lords are like, they're just walking around like pussies as usual. So
nobody cares without leverage, right?
So there has to be. So what is the credible threat of violence? The credible threat of violence is sometimes violence has to take place. It doesn't have to be often at all, but every now and then, there has to be a revolution, there has to be an uprising, there has to be a riot. And that hasn't happened in this country really in any kind of credible way. It happened a little bit during BLM, a little bit, not really as much as the right would have you believe. 99% peaceful, but certainly, you really have to go back. Even the Battle of Seattle, whoop-de-deal, they broke a Starbucks window. So what? You have to go back to the 60s and early 70s in this country to see that kind of level of mayhem. And it's not a coincidence that that's the last time we saw major anti-poverty programs, withdrawal from, the forcible withdrawal of U.S. troops from a foreign war. Real major changes that led to, we celebrate the Stonewall right? Well, what happened? That was a 3-day riot, running battles through Greenwich Village between the NYPD and gay people. And that's how the modern gay rights movement was born. That's just history. That's not like about anarchism. not about enjoying violence for its own sake. It's not rollerball. It's like
reality. It's just reality.
It's just how it works.
I mean, how do they think this country was formed, right? I mean,
Right.
like it wasn't people
If
just
we
mulling
written a nice-
around.
If we wrote a nice letter to Buckingham Palace, hey, King George, it would be awesome if we had our own country. Do you mind? And he'd be like, fuck off. Right?
Yeah, nobody cares without leverage. I mean, that's just the truth. That's just reality. Like, I don't have to accept your opinion, man, if you don't have anything that you can use against me for leverage.
Right.
And that's why politics is built on how much control do you have. Do you think that these Republicans will be voting on this bill if Donald Trump didn't have the capability of ruining their life by kicking them out of office?
No.
Who was the guy, Tillis, the one who quit? It was like, all right, what he said, fuck it, I'm done. That's the only way he could come on and be honest. He's like, fucking him out.
Or you could have like a, have decency, sir moment where someone's like, you want to primary me? Fuck you. Bring it.
But that's Thomas Massey. Massey does that.
Yeah.
But Massey is very, very few who can pull it off. Where he's like, if you want to come after me. Fuck it. He made it kind of his brand.
Way, look, it's Al Gore. His father was a senator, all by the same name, right? He was Al Gore Jr. He was Al Gore Sr. Yeah. I think it was 1968 when, or might have been 1970, but anyway, Al Gore's father sat a senator. They all lived in Washington. Sat his family down and said, "Listen, I've concluded." He was from Tennessee was a conservative state. He was a conservative Southern Democrat. He concluded that the Vietnam War was a mistake, and it might have been after the Tet Offensive, or maybe it took a little longer. But anyway, he called his family together and he said, "Listen, I'm going to give a speech against the war. It's wrong. I can't stand it. I'm not going to support it anymore. I'm not going to let it happen. It's not going to happen on my watch. This means I'm going to lose. I don't care. I know you all love living in Washington, but we're going to be moving back to Tennessee. Sorry, but it's just how it is." And he went and gave the speech, and that's exactly what happened. He went through with the election. He was turned out by the voters of Tennessee who supported the butchery in Vietnam. And, he's a profile in courage. He did. Wow. He knew what was going to happen. He did what is integrity? Integrity is doing the right thing when it goes against your narrow parochial self-interest. That's what it is. And that's what he did. And we don't have much of that around these days. I don't know. It's kind of funny too, because it's like, if you do the right thing, if you were like an anti-Trump Republican who came out against, like, if you scuttled the big beautiful bill today, like you lied to Speaker Johnson and you said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to vote for that," and then you're like, and you vote no. Well, okay, I'm just going to say cynically, no worries. You have an anchor job at MSNBC. Like, in 2 months, you're going to be making more money than you ever did grifting in Congress. Like, just do that. You'll be famous. You'll be
John
beloved
McCain
by Democrats, right? So
it puts me on John McCain. When John McCain gutted, but that was different though. John McCain hated Donald Trump, so he wasn't doing it for the right reasons. He was just gutting it for the reasons of Trump. This puts me in mind of Richard Nixon. There's a story about Nixon and what is his name? The one with the deep, deep voice. It'll come to me in a moment. What is his name? You know it. His Secretary of State.
Kissinger,
thank you. Where Kissinger was an asshole. I'll just say it that way. And that's to put it mildly. Yeah. But there's this conversation that he's having with Richard Nixon. And apparently Richard Nixon put buses all around the White House because he thought the people were going to break down the barricades and come and get him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "They're coming to get me," Kissinger or whatever he was calling him. And of course, he's like, "Let's keep this conversation private," to which Kissinger said, "We will." And then he immediately told the press what's happening in the White House. Like, that, would Nixon have did the EPA? Would Nixon have, wanted the reverse income tax? Would he have, and we're talking about a cynical politician. Nixon hired a woman for a job that he knew she was going to fail at, just so he could say, "Well, see, can't do anything about women in the order, women in Congress and whatnot." Meaning he was a cynical SOB. And yet, even he was at the point of that level of terror from the standpoint of the public, that on some level had some kind of influence and leverage on him in a way.
I mean, Jamal, I remember. I mean, when Nixon resigned, it was the summer I turned 11, and I was watching the hearings all summer long. I remember the day before he resigned, there was a huge crowd surrounding the White House, and it was a mob, and it was peaceful, but it was big. There was a credible threat of violence, and people were just had enough, and it was a beautiful but hot day, and the news helicopters are like going over and looking at this crowd, and as the day progressed, the rumor went out that Nixon was considering resigning, and so the tension was getting hotter and hotter. Like some guy tried to climb the fence and then got pulled down by like the Secret Service, and it looked honestly like there was going to be a mob that was going to storm the White House, climb the fence, swarm in, and drag the president out, and do God knows what. And people, this is like a completely like forgotten episode in U.S. history, but it, I mean, you could look it up. It's like, anyway, the point is, finally the news broke. The president's going to give a national speech tonight. He's going to announce his resignation effective 12 noon tomorrow.
Wow.
The tension. And so what's funny is right at that moment, a Mayflower moving van pulled up to the entrance of the White House to get the president's belongings. The tension broke, and people started cheering. And that's so I would argue that the resignation was certainly at least precipitated. The timeline was shortened. It might not have happened at all, but I think certainly if it had happened, it would have happened later. That mob made it happen. It's like
Ted Rall, political cartoonist,
of violence.
Political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, co-host of TMI with Manila Chan, and also co-host of Deprogram with the one and only John Kariakou. Ted, thank you for this, man. Always appreciate you, man. Thank you for this. Have a good one. Be safe. All right. I would like to bring in another favorite guest of mine. I swear, I know I tell him every time he comes here. He's informed my workable point of view. Professor Richard Wolff. Professor Richard Wolff is Professor of Economics Emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a visiting professor at the Graduate Program in International Affairs at the New School University in New York City. He is founder. Yeah, I guess I have to ask you about Mandani, New York. I forgot about the New York connection. He's founder of Democracy at Work and host of the nationally syndicated show Economic Update, a fantastic show, by the way. His latest book, The System is the Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself, is available with his other books, Understanding Socialism and Understanding Marxism, at democracyatwork.info. Professor, how you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay, Jamal, and I'm glad to be talking with you.
Well, thank you for this. Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, Big Bertha, a grotesque, just profoundly astonishing naming of a bill, if ever one existed. But that bill is going to be utterly grotesque in regards to what it's going to do to SNAP benefits, what it's going to do to Medicare, what it's going to do to jobs, solar power, what it's going to do to jobs in healthcare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they are running around acting as if, hey, this is going to cut taxes. It's going to be fantastic. Give me your take on this. And I want to piggyback that with this idea that there are no protests in the streets.
Well, I think you put the two things together that need to be put together, the most important part. Let me talk first about the bill and then talk about the streets. The best way to understand this bill is to understand it as act number 2 in a 2-act play that is the basic Trump presidency. In Act 1, his first 4 years, in December of 2017, he, controlling the Congress at that time the way he does now, got through a tax cut. And it was a tax cut that was bigger than most tax cuts have been. Everybody knows that and agrees to that. And it favored corporations and the rich and everybody except a few people that no one takes seriously anymore understand that it did that. Now, what was most interesting about that tax cut is that it came at the end of a 40-year period, the 1980s, 90s, first and second, basically, decades of this century. 40 years during which every statistic economist study showed a redistribution of wealth in America from the bottom and the middle to the top. Everyone shows it. Oh, we disagree about the specific numbers, but no one seriously disputes that we had redistributed wealth in a way we had never seen before in America in that 40-year period. To say the same thing in simple English, never did corporations and the rich need a tax cut less than in that moment when they got it. And the only thing the limp and lame Democrats could do was to attach to that law a sunset, a date, namely December 31st, 2025, when the provisions of that tax cut would expire. So the business community cheered. They cheered as loud or louder than those people that your previous guest told us about the day that Nixon resigned. The people outside the White House cheering when the Mayflower moving truck arrived to take his stuff out of the bedroom, whatever they did. Well, not only did they cheer, but they did what you could expect them to do. They weren't horrified by Mr. Trump's white supremacy. They weren't horrified by his scapegoating immigrants. They brought him back for his second bow. They brought him back, and he had a number one task: perpetuate that tax cut from before and add a little extra tax cut for us on your second time. They brought him back, and over the last few weeks, he delivered on what he was sent to Washington to do. All the rest of it is political theater. Oh, it may have terrible results. It may be rehabilitating every kind of racism and jingoism. Horrible. I don't question that. But that's a sideshow, however much you and I may be horrified by it. The main show is the one we've just watched. The tax cut bill of 2017, which we didn't need and shouldn't have done then, has now been continued rather than letting it expire at the end of this year, which is what should have happened. That's what he did. That the big beautiful, that's all theater. It's a simple job. He was sent there to do. He's done it. And the people who run this country, the big bankers, the big hedge fund operators, the leaders of Amazon and Google and all of that, they don't care what he does the next 2.5, 3 years. Who cares? He's done, just like they didn't care what he did in 2018, 2019. For them, his presidency is over. The rest, he can do whatever he wants because they don't care. If he goes too far for them, they'll slap him on the wrist and he'll back off. By the way, that's what's happening to many of the tariffs. He did a big show. He's the big tough guy in the world. He's telling everybody what else to do. It doesn't work. And so he backs off. But the people who run it, they don't care. They don't care whether he does it. They don't care whether he succeeds a lot, a little, not at all. They've got their job done and they're happy. And they're starting to look now. This is Mr. Trump's biggest problem. Now that it's done, they're looking who the next president is going to be, because for them, Mr. Trump is over.
Yeah.
And we all may worry, my God, what may that man do in the next 3 years? But they don't. They know what he was sent there to do. He has now done it. There will be an agreement between the House and the Senate, and that bill will be packaged up, and it will give them more or less what they want. Now, one last thing about that before I go to the streets.
Yeah.
When Mr. Trump came to office the first time, part of his appeal was he said what the conventional leaders of the Republican and Democratic Party never talk about.
Right.
That the United States is becoming a fundamentally more unequal society with each passing day. And that's been going on for the 40 years because that's what a redistribution of wealth, that's what it means. You're taking wealth away from the poor, you're taking it away from the middle, and you're creating the Jeffrey Bezos of the world who take over Venice for their marriage because that's the world they live in, right? Most Americans can't get to Venice to look at it, and he owns it for a week of festivities, and he arrives in his $500 million yacht, right? You and I make jokes about it because it's like talking about the moon. That's unrelated we are.
So
you're creating gross inequality. That inequality, which helped Mr. Trump get into office because people are upset about it, he made it worse. His tax cut worsened the inequality. Then, because he's a smart politician, he turned around, used the fact that inequality had gotten worse, blamed it on Biden, who, by the way, also made it worse, but he didn't do it anywhere near as bad as Trump had done. He didn't pass a tax cut, anything like that. So, but it was clever. So people are still upset because inequality is still worse. He gets himself into office a second time. And now this big, beautiful bill will make it worse again. You know what we are watching? And if I can get this across to your audience, it's the best thing I can do. We are caught up now in an economy that is spinning out of control. The rich who sit at the top have no limits. When one of them, like Warren Buffett, says, hey, we're not paying enough taxes, we're going to become so rich, and the rest of the people are going to become so poor that they are going to do what your previous guest told us about that crowd outside the house on Mr. Nixon's last day. We're going to hear more and more of those stories. You're going to have them on your program. You're going to comment because you have a wonderful sense of humor and you're going to play with it, which you should. Laughing at it is the only way to stop from crying about it. I know. But in the long run, we're going to do both. We'll laugh when we can, and then, you know, when you can't get medical care for your mother when she needs it, when you can't get a job, when you've gone to school and spent all that money, borrowed up to wazoo so you can get a degree and it doesn't get you the job you had dreamed and hoped for. Now you're stuck with a debt you can't cover. I mean, we're talking about the experience of millions and millions of Americans that's getting worse with each day.
Yeah.
And a society that's spinning out of control that way, well, that takes me to something you and I have discussed, which is we are living through the dying of an empire. And these kinds of things are what happen when empires die. Now, in the streets, in order for the people to go into the streets, there has to be the perception on the part of the people who are very smart, who see this. I'm talking to you from Manhattan, New York. I recently went to the polls and voted for a man named Zoran Mamdani, as did most Americans who voted in the Democratic primary, right? I did that. Why? Because he's a socialist. And that is already so important to get people's heads to start thinking that I would have voted for him even if I didn't admire many of his particular programs, which I do. So this was an easy choice for me, as it was for a million other New Yorkers like me. We defeated the former governor of this state by a lot. And this is a politician who nobody barely knew 6 months ago. So this tells you this is a country on edge. But for people to go into the streets tomorrow, they have to have a sense that it can make a difference. And in order to give them that sense, there have to be people who organize that, who say, look, we are the committee for, it doesn't matter, a group, we're a group of people. Here we are, here's our names, here's what we do. We're like you. We're gathering folks together to be in front of the mayor's office on Thursday at 3:00, whatever it is. Then people will come and they will fill the streets because they have a sense that they're part of something. Now, sometimes it happens, and we use this word usually mistakenly, spontaneously, very rarely. Spontaneous usually means that you don't know who organized it, so you think it kind of happened. I'm willing to bet you there were people in the weeks before they gathered at the White House, the way your previous guest just described to us, who helped organize, who said through a whole lot of networks of organizations, we're going to be in front of the White House at this time on that day. Right? Joined us. And another group said, yeah, we're going to go too. And so they came. Now, if we had a real democracy, which we have not had in my memory, and I was born in the United States, if we had a democracy, the Democratic Party would have been out there organizing peaceful protest in the streets to show that the people don't want this. Just like we showed Mr. Nixon, bye-bye, we don't want you no more. Okay? But the Democratic Party is Republicans light. It's the same thing. They're not going to do it. They're going to sit in Washington and they're going to attach a little limit here, a little limit there, and then run a campaign saying, vote for us. We're not as bad as them. You know, this is childish. We have no organizations. I shouldn't be that harsh. Our organizations are few, far between, and weak. And that's a terrible problem. We've got to fix that. No one else is going to do it for us. We've got to create the organizations, work together to be a real opposition, and then we can go in the streets and we can make an enormous difference, no question at all. Part of the reason they keep doing what they're doing, making the inequality of this society ever worse, is because they have no opposition.
Yes. I hate to quibble with you, but your senator in New York, Chuck Schumer, was very pleased with himself that he got them to change the name from Big Beautiful Bill. That's not sufficient for you.
No, really,
no.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you see the humor in it because you're right.
As you said, if you don't laugh at it, because it seems so, it's mind-blowingly grotesque. And what ends up happening is you get, let's say, like George Bush passes his tax cut. When Obama comes in, he doesn't do anything different. No. Meaning you get the situation where it inexorably moves in one direction and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Donald Trump, on top of passing his tax cut, is enshrining his other tax cut into law.
Right.
So the person
perpetuate it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you know, there's something worse with Mr. Schumer. I mean, it's beyond word. One of the things that Trump does is what every great tax cut for corporations and the rich always does. In order to get that passed, they put with it a teeny little tax cut for average people in order to fool the public into thinking, oh, I'm getting a tax cut alongside the rich and the corporations. No, they're getting an enormous hamburger, and you're getting a small crumb off a corner of the hamburger bun. Now, if you're happy with that, okay, but then you're an idiot. It's really an insult. Well, what did they do this time? This time they said, we're letting tip income be free of taxes. They added this. Yeah.
No tax on tips.
But if you read the law, what they passed here, first there's a limit. You can't do that for more than $25,000 a year. Well, if you talk to most waiters and waitresses, that's already what it's what they. I mean, it gives them nothing. You put a cap. Is there a cap on rich people? No. There's a cap on the tip. Who invented this behavior? Now, it's also the case, and here's where people like you are important, Jamal. The public doesn't know most of this. The mass media, who are owned and operated by the same people who are donating to these political parties, they don't explain to people what I'm explaining to you now. You know, I've developed a fairly large audience around the world for what I do. And I've wondered to myself, right? How come? Why? I'm not saying stuff so different today from what I said 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. I've been a professor of economics all my life. My tune hasn't changed, but suddenly I have an audience. Well, the good news is that means that the public, they kind of want to hear what I'm saying. They know somewhere that there's something to this, and they're not getting it except from people like me. Not only me, but from people like me, and from programs like yours that are willing to talk about this stuff. It makes you, I don't want to give you a big swelled head now, but it makes you it really does make you a very important phenomena. Programs like yours are among the few where this can be spoken about. Otherwise, you're lost in the details and the weeds. Every story I read in the mass media, almost all of them are full of information that isn't important and are lacking the information that is. So partly you want to blame people for not going in the streets, but they don't have the information, which if they had it, would bring many more of them into the streets than we see now.
I'm curious on something else. I don't remember who said this, so I can't really ascribe who pointed it out, but I think that what they were saying is true. For somebody like Mandani had in one of his speeches made this argument of saying he was talking, and he says, we must get our hands on the means of production. Now, when I hear that, I'm like, yes, good job. Good job, right? By the same token, he had this big smile on his face when he said it. Effectively like, yeah, all of this is nice. We need to get more people elected. We need to get more socialists elected. We need to get more people who are politically minded into the political process, who care about these items. They're not just there as a figurehead. They actually are trying to get things accomplished. But whether it's him or whether it's somebody like Sanders, who more like a Democrat, FDR type Democrat, not really a socialist, I wouldn't call. They made this point of saying, inevitably, you get to the point where you have to make a choice about getting your hands on the system itself. And, you know, when Donald Trump, and I'll use him as an example, when Donald Trump initially got in office, he passed the tariffs thing. The economy freaked out. The market was dropping, I think, 1,000 points every day. The dollar dropped in value, I think like 10, 12% over the course of 6 months or so. And even now, I mean, or at the time, the bond market was the thing that even made Trump, who doesn't really care, seemingly. Like Trump sleeps fine. He's the only president that hasn't aged because he doesn't really care. Even the bond market was able to get Trump to bend the knee and back away. And they even point out, they said, when the bond market started flipping out, the faith and credit of the US government was at risk. Trump understood it was at risk, in which case he backed away from the hot stove. Meaning, if somebody like Trump is willing to back away from the hot stove, rando Democrat, rando socialists will also. Like, is it like, I guess what I'm asking is, isn't there a point where if you're trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, that you run up with hard limits of a system itself that doesn't believe in those things? Like, people act like they're like a fish in water. They don't realize that it's a capitalistic system. It's not anything that you want it to be. It's built. It's in the BRICS. Don't they have to, like, how do you get around that? Or is there even a way to get around it? Or is it so in the BRICS that you're stuck with running up against those hard limits if you are indeed trying to get your hands on the means of production as a socialist or as a democratic socialist?
It's the $64,000 question. But I got good news for you. I know the answer. And so does everybody else. People are just afraid to say it. You've already just done it. And Zoran Mamdani has to do it. Whether he does it as humor, as an aside, whether he's quiet about, you have to eventually, for example, you have to have your own mass media. You cannot continue to be enslaved by a mass media. You can't do it. I'm sorry about this.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You are fine.
You have to have your own organs. If you look at the growth of any left-wing or socialist movement in the history of the world, they eventually had to have their own newspaper, their own radio station, their own television station. They had to be able to communicate. Now, the internet allows us with social media to get halfway there. The internet is a very powerful weapon, not just for the system to control us, it's used for that, but for us to mobilize against it. And we are using it as we are in this very moment that I'm speaking to you, and that we can project this out. But here's the bigger one. We have to come up with a strategy for how our movement, a movement of people for a different economic system, can begin to accumulate the means of production, the very way that goods and services are produced and distributed in a society. Because we're not going to have followers if they can't put their shirt on in the morning, and if they haven't got food on the table and a shelter for them to sleep under. And how are we going to do that? And the answer is, in my judgment, what is called the cooperative movement. We have got to understand that already out there across America, and even more around the world, there are people who have gotten together to organize production in a different way. No small group of people at the top who own the business. No. The businesses will be owned collectively by all the workers who come there to do the job, whether it's making a software program or cooking a meal or running a school, it doesn't matter. One person, one vote. We bring democracy to the workplace. The minute we do that, Jamara, we have taken away from the people at the top the ownership of the enterprise, and therefore they draw into their hands the profits and they use them to buy the politicians. That's right. If we substitute a cooperative organization of the workplace for what we have now, we take away from them the profits, because those will be earned by us collectively, and we will be deciding together what we want to do with the profits. There won't be a tiny proportion of us sitting at the top using the profits we all work to help produce to take care of them, to let them become rich, that's the mistake. We have accepted that somehow the world has to be organized with a few people at the top of every business, of every factory, every store, every office. Why? 3 centuries ago, we said we're not going to be governed by a king and his son or daughter who's the queen. What? We're not going to allow that. We separated a lot of them. We separated the heads of a lot of them from the rest of their bodies, if you remember. And we said, no more you. And now England has one, because every few years they need to have a parade in London to pretend that they have a king who they give a crap about. They don't. We don't have one. If we got rid of the king, here's the way I teach it my students. The kings were clever. They realized that we wouldn't allow them anymore. So they changed their name and they hid. They changed their name. We're not kings anymore. Our new name is CEO.
Right.
Going right inside the company, and there we're going to be the king. We sit in an office. We have a special office. Looks a little like a throne. And we have the power to take the job, give you the job, not give you the job, raise your salary, lower your salary, move to China, not move to. We make all the decisions. You all have to live with them, just like a king. What are we doing? This is a country that gives lip service to democracy, and in the workplace, we don't have any, and we sit there like bumps on a log, allowing this to continue. Mr. Trump is a symptom of that system. You don't want Mr. Trump? You better change the system, because after Mr. Trump, there's another Mr. Trump waiting. You know it, and I know it.
Professor Richard Wolff, you always have my deepest appreciation for joining me. Honest to God. Professor Wolff.
Jamara, let me say it because I know it embarrasses you, but you have the appreciation of me and a lot of other people because you put this stuff out there for people to think about.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Honestly, it does. Right. You have a good one, all right? Thank you for this.
Thank you. Until the next time.
Have a good one. All right. And just for the audience would know, Professor Richard Wolff, he is Professor of Economic Emeritus, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and a visiting professor at the graduate program in International Affairs for the New School University, New York City. He is founder of Democracy at Work and host of the nationally syndicated show, Economic Update, fantastic show, by the way. His latest book, The System is the Sickness, When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself, is available with his other books, Understanding Socialism, Understanding Marxism, at democracyatwork.info. And of course, he's also on Twitter at Prof. Wolff. But I see a woman in the background ready to go to war. Sarah Bils.
Hi.
The creator and editor of DD Geopolitics. I know I say it all the time, every time you come here. Fantastic outlet.
Thanks.
You guys do God's work. How are you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing okay. I am dragging ass, but I'm okay. I'm still okay. I wanted to get into not the big beautiful bill. You guys hit on something. No, I'm
I don't know anything about it. I'm trying to stay far away from that discourse.
And you are good for doing so. You're good for doing so. Usually the show does geopolitics, but I call myself doing both. And so I have to.
I do it too. Stuff. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of American stuff that really has a lot to do with international or foreign policy. So I cover it as well.
Let's talk the Abraham Accords.
Oh, okay.
Well, I want to talk two things. One, what the hell is going on with Azerbaijan? I'm confused.
That's interesting. I have theories. I won't make any bets because I don't have good luck with bets with you. But I have.
Damn right. No, I'm teasing. Just so the audience would know, Azerbaijan has been kicking up dust towards Iran, meaning it's widely believed that the drones and whatnot that were used inside of Iran was being fired out of Azerbaijani airspace, or at the very least they were reported from Azerbaijan. And they kidnapped, I'm going to use the term kidnapped, Sputnik reporters.
You beat them.
In retaliation, and beat the living shit out of them. In retaliation for Russia having a crackdown on criminal gangs and kill squads in Russia, which makes you believe very strongly that means the Azerbaijan government is linked to those criminal gangs. Because otherwise, why are they acting this way? What is going on with this?
We have a lot going on in the Caucasus. Funnily enough, I'm actually rereading Clash of Civilization, and the section I'm on is about the Caucasus, and it's a whole entangled mess even back in the 90s. So people need to understand that these lines of who's on whose side in the Caucasus are not always clearly drawn. They change and they can be volatile. At the end of the Soviet Union, Russia in the Caucasus anyway, it seemed like Russia was more favoring to Azerbaijan, which was strange because the Soviet Union didn't really get along with Muslims, but they wound up giving them Nagorno-Karabakh, or I call it Artsakh. They gave it to Azerbaijan, blah, 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 blah. Well, we all know that craziness ensues. But then we get up until now, and we went through the 2000s where Russia was a pretty good ally of Armenia, and then that kind of fell apart when Azerbaijan attacked them again. So Russia doesn't really have a lot of friends in the Caucasus right now. We maybe can talk to Armenia again, and of course Georgia is a friend, but I wouldn't say they're an ally, not an enemy though. But so we have they're more a Georgia first, which is totally fine.
Well, I wasn't one for that. I mean, Armenia was getting close. I was at the radio station when the war in Nagorno-Karabakh took place, and Armenia, after getting closer to the West, had this weird expectation that Russia was supposed to jump in and save it.
I never frame it in the Russia betrayed Armenia. It's much more complicated than that. But so we get to this Azerbaijan thing. We know that Azerbaijan is exceptionally close to Turkey. And then through that, they're also close to Israel. They supply a lot of their fuel. I think it's 40%, which is crazy. Yes. There were reasons to suspect that the drones and stuff were launching from Azerbaijan. I suspect that Azerbaijan, and don't quote me, but is directly involved in the assassinations of the president and the foreign minister. I think they're directly involved in that. And so we have a plane that gets shot down in Azerbaijan that's still being investigated, which it still looks kind of hairy, a little bit shady. And we have Aliyev making overtures to Zelensky, and then Russia comes and takes 2 huge bombs that they don't usually use, and they blow up 2 oil refineries in Western Ukraine that refine oil for Azerbaijan, that refine oil for Israel. Yes. So then we see Aliyev, and Aliyev is he's horrible, a horrible, terrible person. He's like if Bibi and Erdogan had a baby, that would be Aliyev. He's like that. And so we have these NGOs operating in Russia. Now, Russia has banned most of the Western NGOs, but they allow some of the Eurasian and African NGOs. And apparently these NGOs, they're called the Azerbaijani Ural Committee or Azerbaijan Ural Commission, something like that. They work with Ukrainians. The Ural part, that's the Ukrainians and southern Russia. So they were found out to be NGOs. Well, these NGOs were found out to be drug trafficking and spying for I'm guessing for the Azerbaijanis, but I mean it could be for the Turks, it could be for the Israelis,
or even the Ukrainians.
Correct. And I think this is a good sign. I think it's bad. I think it's not good that it's happening, but I think it's a good thing because this forces Russia to choose a side. You're not going to be able to pussyfoot around this Israel thing forever and say, there's Russian speakers in there. What do you want me to do? You can't do that forever. I'm sorry. You just can't. You're not going to be able to get away with it. And they're coming for you. And they're telling you that they're coming for you next. They're coming for Russia. And this should be the point where Russia wakes up and says, Israel, Turkey, Ukraine, and Azerbaijan are forming an axis or adding on, and you want to talk about the Abraham Accords, this goes right with it, are adding on to this effort to isolate Iran. And Azerbaijan will do that for Turkey and Israel, regardless of its history with Iran. So It's time for Russia to wake up and pick a side. And you're not going to be able to pussyfoot around this war much longer. You're going to have to, we all think that they're on Iran's side, blah, 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 blah. And then Putin always, crushed our dreams, mentions the Russians in Israel or something like that. But you're not going to be able to get away with that much longer because it's going to make you look weak.
And I don't know how much Iran trusts Russia.
I don't think that they should.
Well, I don't think that they do. I had a Russian guest on. God, man, this has been a weird show. A very religious woman. And then you'd have Ted Rall talking about porn stars. Then you go to Professor Wolff. It's just an odd show. But I guess my point is, in asking her, or for that matter, Morandi, one of the key things that keep coming up is independence. We need independence. We need independence. And in talking to Laith pointed out, he says, look, what went on with the Soviet Union or even Medvedev gives them a clear sense that, no, we need our own independence.
Sure.
Which I get. It slightly freaks me out, but I get.
It's kind of utopian. Nobody is ever really fully independent or fully self-sufficient, except maybe the hegemon, and even they really aren't. So
no, nobody is.
I understand their concerns and their paranoia. I know that that's been a doctrine of theirs since 1979, which was kind of like, we don't get involved in other people's wars, and we avoid that by not allowing them to get involved in ours. that
Right.
sort of thing.
Which I
I
get.
get it. But
Man, we're in a hostile world. What is
yeah,
it?
your enemies are not going to allow that.
No, it's like by definition, you are aligned, whether you want to or not.
That's
And
what I said
so,
yesterday. I was like, you're going to get to a point where you don't have a choice, and that choice is going to be made for you. And if you do that, then you're stuck with what you get, and you're stuck in whatever position that you're in.
Choice is already made for them. From my point of view, it is. I mean, the moment that you sold those drones to Russia, what is the U.S. thinking in that moment? Or the moment that you're giving oil to China, what is the U.S. thinking in that moment? Well, the U.S. is thinking Iran is a problem. Mm-hmm. Now, Iran was already thinking that, because from our point of view, we wanted to get rid of all these countries in the Middle East. But that just doubles down on this idea that multipolarity requires, on some level, Iran to exist. And if Iran doesn't get that, which is what was freaking me out before I had these conversations, it was like, oh God, they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get it. You guys are in it together, whether you want to or not. But they do seem to get it now more so. They seem to be developing technology with China, or at the very least getting technology from China. They do seem to be getting some kind of layered defenses from Russia, or it's like a wink and a nod of, no, I'm not coming to militarily support you. Wink, wink, nod, nod. So I think they do kind of get it. From your point of view, what do you mean by Russia needs to pick a pony? What do you mean by that? Explain.
It feels like Russia's sitting on both sides. Russia has always had an affinity for the West, has always had an affinity for Europe. They've always wanted to be European, especially in the Moscow, St. Petersburg area. And so I worry that kind of clouds their judgment. They really, like, that part of Russia really believes that they belong to the Europeans, that they belong to Europe. And I just, I think that gets in the way of a lot of things and makes them more hesitant. They're also a little bit too pragmatic. They need to realize that they're going up against people that won't care in 3 years what happened 3 years ago, right? They're going to do whatever they want anyway. So this idea, like, I don't want to hurt our already tenuous relations with Israel because there's Russian speakers there and like all of this stuff. And it's like, you don't get to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You don't get to play this game anymore. You want to hang around with the oligarchs and placate them and let them come back and forth with their Israeli passports. They're not even Russian. They're mostly Ukrainian and Polish. They're all from Pale of Settlement. They're not Russians. They use Russia. They use Russia as a crutch and a cudgel. And they're not loyal to Russia at all. Go and ask any Israeli what they think about Russia. They hate Russia. Hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. I listen to Israelis constantly because I want to know what they're talking about. And they had a whole space the other day talking about how much they hated Russia. And they couldn't wait for Iran to fall because Russia would be next. They hate Russia. And the Russians inside of Israel, what little of them are there, the actual ethnic Russians, are treated like absolute crap. And I'm like, this is not the Donbass. This is not, you can't go in here and fix things, or they're not loyal to Russia. They're not ethnic Russians that are like, Putin, come save us. You're worried that the Russian speakers, and is he using that as an excuse, or does he really feel that way? Either way, you've got a lot more Muslims than you do Russian Jews sitting in Israel. I think it's time to think about what you're really going to do for the future of your country. And it's not to bring 2 million Jews back from Israel. That's crazy. It's just crazy. I understand the sentimentality. I get it. I understand him say, we got to protect our Russian speakers, but like, at what cost?
Sir, I agree with everything that came out of your mouth. Every last word. Every last syllable. Every last vowel.
Russian speakers.
Every last word. I remember when he said that when he was sitting at the conference. And, he felt some kind of way about people saying Russia is not living up to its responsibilities.
And they're not.
Like, he chafed at it, right? He's like bristled at the very notion. Like, how dare you say some shit like that? He bristled at it. Mm-hmm. And like the fact that they even asked him the question is pretty astonishing, which means that question was being asked like heavily enough where it bubbled up to where Putin felt like he had to deal with the question directly. And, for him to say, well, we have X number of Russian speakers in Israel. Okay, dude, that doesn't...
I was asking you to bomb Israel anyway. What are you talking about?
No, they're not. It's like, poor answer. Poor answer. Like, that was a poor answer because it made it come across as if he had some sort of an
excuse.
Yeah, it makes him feel like there's some kind of weird association with Israel.
Instead of just
that
saying we
shouldn't be
can't,
there.
you know, if you could have said like, oh, we're not in the place to assist them right now, that would have been more acceptable than we've got 2 million Russian speakers in Israel. What?
Yes. Yes.
Because
That sounds horrible.
What? That makes it sound like there's some sort of subversion, and that's why you can't. Like, what's going on that you can't make moves against Israel? It can't just be 2 million Russian speakers. That makes it sound more like untoward. That makes it sound more like I've got people I've got to answer to.
Well, maybe, I mean, but that's the same argument he's using to go into Ukraine, though. Like, yes, part of it is the expansion, but the other part of it is we're going to defend Russian speakers in Donbass.
That's why I get the consistency to a degree. I do get the consistency to be like, my concern is Russian speakers. But look at how he talks about the Donbass and the people of Israel. People of Israel, not Russians. They're Russian speakers. He never calls them Russians. People in Donbass are Russians.
I don't know. I didn't like that answer.
Distinction on purpose, but I've noticed that he does use it, and I don't know. But I agree. I agree with you. It's just getting kind of tedious and silly.
I didn't like that answer.
And I was so glad that they forced him to answer it, and he looked visibly uncomfortable. You should be uncomfortable. The Arabs, and more importantly, the Iranians, are questioning this whole entire multipolarity thing and this whole entire BRICS thing. While BRICS is not a military bloc, everybody understands that it's not a military bloc. Where do economics end and military action begin? Because that's what BRICS is. It's an economic bloc. So if they're coming to destroy Iran's economy again, what are we doing here?
It needs to be
What's the point of being in BRICS? So you can trade?
It has to be a military element to it. It has to be. Like, I don't know how you get
At
out
least
of
there's
it
an
without
offensive
doing
element.
something.
I can see like not going on offensives with people. I can understand that. I can understand not engaging in the BRICS name like that. We're talking about defending a sovereign state.
Right.
That belongs to BRICS. That is one of the but one of the main secondary members of BRICS. And you're talking about 2 million Russian speakers, and Israel ain't joining BRICS. They're making the Abraham Accords. They're the center of it. What do they think the Abraham Accords are a counter to? BRICS.
And that gives us a good intro to the Abraham Accords.
Exactly. That's why I said it all ties right back in together.
It does, because what they're trying to do, it's almost as if they realize, all right, us trying to knock down Iran didn't work. They're stronger than we thought. And we've kicked the hornet's nest. And so the public, the third generations since the revolution, realize what the people in the first generation were talking about the U.S. and the West not being able to be trusted. Like I was telling the woman today, when I see a woman with her hair flailing, a Persian woman with her hair flailing, screaming, "We need nukes! We need nukes!"
We're gonna get them nukes. Have you ever met an Iranian woman? You better get her some nukes.
Well, no, I'm saying that the woman was screaming for nukes, and 2 years ago she would have been at a protest trying to take down the government.
Maybe.
And now she's like, "We need to defend this country. We need nukes. We need to defend this country." I'm saying that is giving this kind of it's a consolidation of power in a way that couldn't have happened without them doing what they did. And so, okay, so I agree with you. They need to be defended. It seems that they realize, all right, this plan of knocking over the government didn't work. And we need to isolate the government until we can drain them of resources to the degree that we can knock them over. And the Abraham Accords, with all of these quisling governments of Saudi Arabia, which is mind-blowing. The notion that these Arab Muslim governments are joining with a government as it actively commits a genocide is mind-blowing and demoralizing. It has to be. And yet, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing.
It's also been a huge psychological experiment on humanity, but we could talk about that another time. The Abraham Accords are expanding. They are expanding to incorporate Syria.
And Lebanon.
Eventually Lebanon, but Saudi Arabia as well. They don't know it yet, but they're coming. So I wrote an article earlier this week.
Wait, I thought Saudi Arabia was already part of the Abraham Accords.
No, they will refuse to normalize with Israel without a Palestinian state. So what the Israelis did was they developed a plan. It's a policy paper called Abraham's Shield. I love policy papers. I think they give you a lot of insight into what people are going to do to you. Just like, I don't know, you can use Path to Persia to look, which was written in 2009, to see what they're doing today to Iran. So I like to read these things. And for the Israelis, theirs are always quite extreme and more so read as a very ideal wish list for them. But you have to remember this is what they're trying to implement. So in the case of Lebanon and Syria, Syria gets to be a buffer zone, which is what they're doing with it. And if you've noticed, a lot of senators and ambassadors have tapped Jolani and said, "You're now we need you as a regional army." So they're going to fight Hezbollah. They'll use Jolani to fight Hezbollah. The government of Lebanon will eventually secede they'll have no choice. First, they have to clean up the Hezbollah problem, and they've got Elon Musk working on the actual government in northern Lebanon. So that's taken care of. Iraq in the Abraham Shield plan is labeled as it's black on the map. So they don't count. They're not going to be going after Iraq. The plan for Iran is complete isolation. Total isolation from everybody else. All of those relationships they've been pulling up in the Gulf, they'll be gone. They won't really be doing too much business with them. And then they're turning Gaza into basically a technocratic surveillance state, 15-minute city, with no cash. This is all part of the Abraham Accords. This is the thing about the Abraham Accords, is that these wars, or whatever you want to call them, they're making it so these countries don't have a choice. They have to go into the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia is big enough and powerful enough monetarily that doesn't have to make that choice right now. Syria had no choice. They had no choice. And what happened with Syria is, they had hundreds of thousands of these Turkic and, all over the Central Asia kind of groups. Well, the Americans said, if you want your sanctions lifted, you got to get rid of them. Well, the other Americans that work with Syria and came in and said, don't get rid of them. We can use them as an army. Yep. So now they have a huge Turkic army that are going to go and terrorize Lebanon, Iraq, and Iran. It's literally ISIS all over again. They're calling them ISIS. They said we found ISIS cells in southern Lebanon the other day. Things are getting crazy. These Abraham Accords are Trump's legacy. They belong to Jared and Ivanka. Ivanka is his favorite child. So it's like, it's just, and this is the new type of imperialism. If you go around these Gulf states and these Abraham Accord states, just look at each one and see, is there a Trump Tower or is there one planned? There's a Trump Tower or one planned in every single one except Lebanon. Every single one.
That's just rank cronyism. I mean, that's just corruption. I mean, that's just the way Trump operates.
But it all kind of goes hand in hand, right? It's like this corrupt business side as well as this weird militaristic. The Abraham Accords are funky, man. And they were all kind of hinged on this normalization with Palestine. Well, in the Abraham Shield plan, they say, we're not going to give them a two-state, but we're going to do separation with autonomy from Judea and Samaria. That's not the West Bank. So you already know their plans for the West Bank. And Gaza's going under a surveillance state with no cash.
But there was never normalization with Gaza. I mean, Israel was never going to accept normalization.
No, but that was the caveat for Saudi Arabia. They wanted a plan for Palestine. They weren't going to normalize with Israel without a plan for two-state or some sort of recognition for Palestine. I don't know if this plan will fit the bill.
I don't believe them. I don't trust Saudi Arabia. Look, I've said it on more than one occasion. I don't trust Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the normalization with Iran had everything to do with them not wanting Iran to hit their oil fields. It had nothing to do with any good notions.
And to get on China's good side, yeah.
Yeah, and in the same way, that weak, quisling government stood by. I mean, let's be very clear. Saudi Arabia has an air force and a military that's supposed to be, like 6th, 7th ranked in the world in regards to costs. And they sat there like, Israel keeps murdering Arab Muslims. Golly gee. And it's like, dude, are you fucking kidding me right now? Right? Like, they have no power in that process. And they are firmly, when Donald Trump, I think it was his last administration, where he was like, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't exist. And he said, yeah, he was like, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't exist. You wouldn't be
the British created you and we've sustained you. The only reason that they're even here is because of Anglo imperialism. That's the only reason the Sauds have any power at all.
Yeah.
And they know that. And that's why they're they placate the West. They know that.
But
They also know, I mean, these bases, this is a lot of analysts have this theory. I don't know if it's true or not, to what extent, but these bases also serve as a deterrent to the populations from uprising against their
I
governments.
think that's what it is also. I mean,
So they very much
MBS
cater to these bases and the Western militaries.
MBS made the point once that his life could be at stake because of the public not liking what is taking place. Basically, they see what's happening, and they know on some level they may even be next from the standpoint of Israel, especially if it takes down Iran, and they try to create this kind of greater Israel through the region, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, etc. And he pointed out, like, look, the public doesn't like what's happening, and my life could be on the line in this. It's like, yeah, dude. I mean, for fuck's sake, you're
supposed to listen to the people. That's the thing about these Gulf states. They have minorities ruling over majorities. Bahrain has a Sunni family ruling over a Shia state. The Saudi family has a different religion than the majority of the Saudis. And they're only being held in place by these sort of Western bolsters. They know it, so they have to placate it. The West loves it because they have oil, and then they have a pliant client state in the Gulf. Yep. I agree. I'm not a fan of Saudi and their sort of kind of snotty isolation. Why should we get involved? Oh, you want to hold on to Mecca and Medina, but you don't want to protect Muslims anyway?
Right. Right.
Millions of dollars from pilgrimages. You can't help other Muslims.
I love that. Snotty isolation. I love that.
It is. It's very much like, why should we get involved?
It's like, how dare you tell us that we should get involved in this? Why is it our business? And it's like, dude, you call yourself home of the Muslims.
Yeah. You want to be home of the Sunni Muslims at minimum, if not all Muslims. Shouldn't you be out there like, I'm the head of the Muslims. I'm the protectorate of these Muslims then.
I mean, for fuck's sake, you're right. They have Mecca in Saudi Arabia.
And for God's sakes, you're bigger than Texas. That's like a huge country. Like, you have no army. It's funny. I was watching a Bin Laden documentary last night because I had nothing else to watch. But, I always forget.
I love that. That's what you do in your free time. Yeah, I just watch Bin Laden documentaries. That's what I do.
Of course. I only watch documentaries. But I always forget about the Saudi element of that. Is that the actual reason he was so mad was because Saudi let America open up bases in there. That's what started Al-Qaeda.
Right.
So that's how tenuous that situation can be. They've had terrorist attacks in mosques and stuff from religious extremists that obviously don't hold the same religion as the government or the majority of the people. They were definitely outliers. But there's an element of that. And MBS is highly aware. In Dubai, they're a little bit more placated because they have more money and there are a lot more rich people, foreigners. They're not going to riot against a foreign state. Bahrain will have the same sort of issues. Saudi, South Yemen may have some of those issues. Qatar probably not, and Oman probably not. But Saudi and Bahrain are definitely hairy. They can get it's a tinderbox in those two states.
Yeah, I think Leith made the point of saying if any war pops off, Iran destroys all of them overnight, and that effectively they collapse. That they can't maintain.
I would not mind that, and I don't think that it's a bad idea. I just hope that there's support for that move. I think that we're getting to the point where drastic measures are going to need to be taken, and these pragmatic kind of where defensive only states are not going to be able to sit in this position that much longer.
What do you mean? You mean like Iran or Russia?
Yeah, you're going to have to start going on the offensive because they're always going to have the upper hand if you're always on the defensive. Okay, we have Mossad cells running around in Iran, causing all kinds of havoc. They're using Azerbaijan to spy on Iran and launch drones. They're inside of Russia. What are we doing here? We're not working together to clean this up. What's going on? There's Mossad all over Ukraine. Ukraine.
In their minds, the longer this goes, the more of an advantage they have.
I don't agree anymore. I agreed before. I agree before, and I thought that Russia did the right thing these past 3 years. I don't agree anymore. Now's the time we need to get to going. Gotta get to going. Isn't that what comedy needs to say?
To be fair, they are in Ukraine. That is a muscular action if there is such a muscular
I don't think
action.
that they need to take military action, Russia. I think that they need to take more diplomatic assertiveness and say, like, Iran needs to do what they need to do. We support Iran in those endeavors, and then leave it at that. I don't think that they need to. No, they have not. They've said, they need to come with their list of demands, and then we'll think about it. Blah, blah, blah. Like, no, that's not how this works. They're your ally. What are you talking about? Like, and China, I mean, and China made Russia look bad. That's
China was full-throated. They were
China made
full-throated.
Russia look bad, and Russia allowed it. And so, at least the best way to maneuver around that is to say we couldn't help at the time, but we support China's assistance, or positively paint the Chinese assistance to Iran in that way. And I've always said from the beginning, anyway, like when people were like, "Where's Russia? Where's Russia? Where's Russia?" I'm like, "This is a China war. This isn't a Russia war."
Why is it a China war? Why is it not a Russia war? I mean, from my point of view,
this is a China. Even historically, this is a China war. China is much more close to Iran than Russia is.
Yeah,
much.
I guess,
especially in weapons and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very much. So.
Well, apparently, jet fighting.
And also, and I don't want to be like a jerk, but it's China. You don't get to stand on the wayside forever because they're not going to come straight at you. You're not always going to see them coming. You have to be ready. They're going to come through Iran, Pakistan, and probably from the West as well through Turkestan.
I would tell you, every person that I spoke to from China has this very zen
yeah, they do.
thought process that I don't have as an American.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we've been around for 5,000 years.
Exactly.
We're
These civilization states, we're Americans. We're like, do something, and they're like, what?
Yeah. I care. Every conversation with Carl John, it's that thing. He's like, I play chess, right? I think, like, for me, it's
Carl
Wolff,
John. Oh yeah, he's like,
I've
been doing a podcast for 10 years, and I'm only on 500 BC.
That's
That's
not Carl John. Sorry, KJ. No, KJ. No, because KJ be very
Carl
like.
John is.
KJ is very calm about
that's
it. That's
how they are, and that's
and
good.
He's like,
that's a good thing.
Ish.
It's a net positive in most situations. It's a net positive.
It's not the way I think. Like in my mind, it's kind of like, hey, so if they take down Iran, what happens to China? Right? Like, it's like for me, it's.
What are they going to do? And China has done an amazing job in Southeast Asia building up these alliances and friendships and business. They have large Chinese minorities in these states. But what about the Philippines? They're rebuilding the bases. So Laos and Thailand are about to go to war. What's going on?
See, that's what I mean, right? It seems like there's a global.
Mm-hmm.
These are fronts.
These things are fault lines, right? And then somebody might come in and say, "Psst, I'll give you the weapons if you want to do that thing you wanted to do the whole time." I'm just waiting because now they're doing Azerbaijan. We have a fault line in the Balkans. We have fault lines in Cyprus. We have fault lines all over the place. Caucasus, other than Armenia and Azerbaijan. This could get very out of hand very quickly, and that's why I mentioned Thailand and Laos. They're fighting over an ancient temple, which this is a historical fault line war. There's no way around this. So these things, I think, are going to continue to pop up,
Taiwan,
especially if they negatively impact the BRICS coalition.
The Cyprus one is funny to me. They're like, "Oh my God, the Israelis are colonizing us."
They really are. They really are.
It's funny.
They really are. They're buying all of it.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's like, "Oh my God, they're going to turn us into Palestinians." It's like, "Oh, dude, okay."
They would. They're all like Orthodox Christians. The Jews don't care.
It's just funny. It's just funny. Sarah, I always appreciate you. I swear to God, I do. You guys, again, do fantastic work. Sarah Bils, DD Geopolitics. I even catch your show sometime on YouTube. I'm sorry, on Twitter. Yeah, it's on Twitter. Because you're 3 hours. Oh, my head is around 12 hours difference because the show takes place on ET, so I'm still tethered to ET. You guys are 3 hours behind that, so you're 15 hours behind.
Oh
so
God.
Under normal circumstances, my time thing's all screwed up. Long story short, every so often I get the catch you guys when you guys are doing your thing on Twitter. So don't always agree, but it's always interesting conversation either way you look at it.
A break from Twitter right now. A little crazy over there. MAGA's a little out of control.
You were on there yesterday doing a live stream.
Yeah, no, that I'm not like active on Twitter. I was streaming from StreamYard.
Okay. I'm just saying there was a Twitter, a thing comes up and it says Sarah is in a space and there are a bunch of other people with you in space and it says Sarah's talking right now.
Oh, Yeah, Spaces. Yeah, I haven't been in.
Twitter.
Yeah, but I'm not doing Spaces right now. I did one yesterday morning, and I'm done right now. There's too much MAGA craziness going on. They're out of control.
Sir, you sound like the alcoholic that my uncle once got put in the hospital after drinking. And he says, well, I stopped drinking yesterday.
Well, last night I got doxxed, so that changes things. You know, MAGA doxed me last night. They're trying to call the police on me. They're trying to get me arrested. So yeah, things change very quickly. So we're on a little hiatus from Twitter. Really not trying to have my daughter doxed by crazy MAGA Zionists that are upset because I said a mean thing about Trump. And so it's not worth it.
That's fucked up. I think they do that shit sometimes.
MAGA.
I mean, but I trash Trump all the time, and I trash Zionists all the time.
Yeah, you're a man.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think
I'm a woman who lives alone.
That sucks.
All good. We get through it. Just take a little.
You be
break.
safe.
I will. You have a good weekend.
You continue to do good work, and you have a good one. Have a good one, all right?
We'll talk soon.
And happy 4th, by the way.
Happy 4th. Bye tomorrow.
Bye-bye. Sarah Bils, she is fantastic. Please do not dox her. She is awesome. DD Geopolitics is fantastic. I know I say it every time she comes on. The fact that I say it this often gets across that it is, at the very least, my belief that it is true. She's fantastic. All right. We have come to the end. This has been a very weird stream. It's been a very weird stream. The conversation between Ted and I went off the rails. Nevertheless, we are men. No apologies for that, is what it is. Flying boar. The problem in Russia is Putin. He didn't provide Syria with air defense, but so did Turkey. I'm not going to touch that. Here's the thing. If Syria collapses on its own, meaning, can Russia really fight a war for Syria, if that makes sense? It's that part. And it's not just Russia's fault. I mean, when we had Kavort on the show, Kavort pointed out that Iran wanted Syria to fight a war against Israel and wasn't going to help it to do it. Okay, that's fucked up. Like, meaning, look, man, either these countries have to realize they're in it together or they're not. And I have concerns. It seems that Iran does seem to be getting more weapon systems from China and Russia in this case, despite maintaining its individuality. So, okay, fair enough. I understand where that's coming from. But Iran's position would have been far better off if Syria still existed. By the same token, do you honestly believe that if Russia had the power to prevent Syria from collapsing, that they would not have prevented it from collapsing? Meaning, do you think that Russia's lot in life is better with Syria existing or without it existing? Obviously, its lot in life is better with it existing. So, I feel you. I get it. I don't know the entirety of the truth in that. What is this? Oh, what is this? Oh, I hate these fucking updates. They try to force you to update your system. It's like, dude, leave me alone. I'm fine with my system the way it is. Because the moment that you change it, it fucks something up. I hate it. All right, let's go with. All right, let's go with today. I have to do it because if I don't do it, they're going to forcibly do it, which is going to screw up my system. All right. Let's see who else. We have Veritas ad Astra. Quote, like stories of AIDS has a video, The Death of Hollywood, a brilliant analysis about the new sympathetic villain phenotype that's being pushed where any justified violent action is indefensible. Let me read that again. Like stories of old has a video, The Death of Hollywood, a brilliant analysis about a new sympathetic villain phenotype that is pushed where any justified violent action is indefensible. I don't understand. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. Sympathetic villain phenotype. I get that part. That's being pushed where any justified violent action. I don't understand. Are you saying that there's a sympathetic, like John Wick, or John Wick, they killed his dog, so it justifies him murdering 100 people in a video in 2 hours? Or Batman even. I mean, Batman may consider himself a superhero, but Batman is a rich guy who goes through the streets beating the shit out of people at night using his wealth to buy equipment as opposed to paying for social programs. Okay, that sounds weird, right? Like, it seems that you can find a better way of using your wealth as opposed to buying gadgets just to beat the shit out of poor people. Like, I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding it. As opposed to these kind of clear delineations between good and evil. Is that being pushed, or is that just a change in the way we see ourselves? We're more honest. Like, if you think of Andy Griffin show, I Love Lucy. Okay, these shows sanitized humanity to such a degree that nobody acted that way in real life. I don't believe for a moment that people acted that way in real life. But it's what we would show of ourselves. It's the image that you're willing to present out to the world. Okay, but people don't act that way. People are grayer. They function based on their needs, based on their environment. And so we start showing more of people doing shit based on their environment. There's a change. I mean, it is a difference in the way that it operates. I don't know. I need an example. Veritas need an example. Maybe I'm fucking this up. Chimo Modu, or is it Madu? Yeah, I go with Madu. What's sad is that the United States Ians, especially white folks, will go along with Trump's nonsense as long as they believe certain other people will suffer more. Yes, that's true. That's true. If that is not true, then I don't understand what the fuck is happening in real life. They will back that nonsense. James Baldwin, I remember at one point, was like, I'm not trying to take your cup of coffee. And of course, he was making that point because it comes across to us as African Americans as you're willing to have a shitty country as long as certain other groups don't benefit from whatever the policy is. So we can't have nice things as a country because some black folks or some Hispanic folk or some rando folk that you don't even know, that you don't care about, that you, for whatever particular reason, believe is undeserved, shouldn't get it. And so nobody should get it. So no, I don't want to increase the minimum wage because, I only make $15 an hour. And if we're trying to increase it to $15 an hour, the guy who drops French fries, well, the guy's not deserving of getting $15 an hour. Or, no, I don't want to have Medicare for all because why should that person get access to health care and I have to pay for it out of my dime? And it's like, dude, it's cheaper. It's cheaper. What is your issue? What is your issue? But by the way, especially people with means. I remember my boss, who were total Democrats, thought exactly that way. Well, I don't have to pay for your health care. Or if you increase the minimum wage, I don't have to pay for your increase in salary. I had a friend of mine who, black guy, owned businesses. And he's like, why should I have to pay more for people? And the thing is like, because people should have a decent wage. And if you can't pay people a decent wage, then maybe you shouldn't exist as a business. And as a democratic society, we can make a determination about what that decent wage is. It's like, dude, I'm crying. I'm sorry that you're crying. I try to make it humorous, even when it's fucked up. I try. Wanda USA. I'm a MAGA boomer. Baby Bush made me hate Republicans. Obama made me hate Democrats. Hits Trump. Trump is still the better of the listed. MAGA hates when he flips to Obama or Baby Bush 2.0 JFK. I so disagree with you, Wanda. I so disagree with you. Donald Trump is not fighting the deep state. Donald Trump is the deep state. Donald Trump is different in manner and tone, not in substance. He has been starting wars across the globe every bit as much as Joe Biden, or every bit as much as Obama, or every bit as much as pick random president. You can say that he's more open to making some kind of deal with Russia. But honestly, that just means he's more corrupt, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. I've never seen a president this corrupt. Yeah, I don't know I don't know where the affection come from. He's grotesque. He's not an evil man-child with a gun, is what I go with. That's what I think he is, an evil man-child with a gun. Very low morals of an alley cat. And by the way, this is not boosting anybody else. Me going after one doesn't mean that the other one is better. It's just I find all of them to be despicable. Donald Trump is co-signing the murder and starvation of millions of people right now. Put that shit in context. And a zero issue doing it. Donald Trump put out a campaign video of them murdering Yemenis in a religious ceremony. They were just civilians. That's what you're dealing with. Donald Trump lied and tried to overthrow the Iranian government and seemed like he had schizophrenic dementia when he realized, oh, I'm not going to be able to create a failed state in Iran. This is the man of peace that we're talking about. And yes, he's about to put in a grotesque tax cut after already having a grotesque tax cut and enshrining that shit into law. I am unaware of who you're referring to as being better in this process. I love you to death, Wendy. I'm just saying, I am unaware of why you believe he's better. And by the way, again, it doesn't mean that the other people are better either. I'm just pointing out that Trump is trash, just like the other political figures were trash. I don't see a way out that box. All of them seem to be very similar to one another, with the difference being in how they talk. And maybe even what they say, but ultimately they end up doing the same. So, Wandy, thank you. I do appreciate it. And I do get the point of view. He talks differently. Fair enough. He also lies as easily as he breathes. How do you distinguish the lying from the other stuff? It's, I guess, what I would get at. So for fact, you're a hero? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm a dude that does YouTube. I wanted Jamal, you talk like Congress is sold out. Congress is sold out. The protests are psyops like Soros, BLM. MAGA has to be relevant after Trump. I would vote for Trump again today, not 2028 though. Wandy, I am not going to be able to convince you of this. At least I'm trying to. Trump is every bit as much of a psyop as BLM, if you want to call BLM a psyop. He is. He's not. Yeah, I mean, I do not know why you add value to this quantity. I don't know why you add value to this quantity. I, honest to God, don't. Noble Brown, thanks for the show again. Forgot to put this in the first, I think that's supposed to be first message. Well, thank you, Noble Brown. Pink Rose, yeah, they're going to pass the bill. A lot of people are going to die. Democrats want that to happen so they can have a better chance next time around. I don't doubt that, Pink Rose. I don't doubt it. I think you're right. I think you're right. And that's the sad part. I think you're right. If the bill passes, we would get rid of MEGA Congress midterm. I don't think so. I don't think so. If you remember, what Ted Rall pointed out was that it is projected to take place after the midterms. After. So no. Frank Frio, Jamal, Barack said everyone should give you super chats. Hope you're well in Malaysia. Yes, I'm doing well. I answered this one, but thank you, Frank Frio. And thank you, Barack. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Wande MAGA wants bill passed individually to get rid of the bills that aren't MAGA versus MEGA. But they didn't do that. Wande, this is the point that I guess I am trying to make. What time is it? Because I have to. Okay. Gerald Salente is coming on at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to have to reshuffle the video. Actually, yeah, I mean, maybe I don't have to reshuffle. I mean, fuck, it's 11, it's 10. I reshuffle. I can do a fresh video feed. Wande, Republicans have the House, Senate, and presidency, and Supreme Court, right? What stops them from breaking this bill up? Now, I know it's budget reconciliation, but they could have broken this bill up. They didn't do that. They wanted to get all of it done at once because they don't believe that it would pass if they could do a piecemeal. They have complete power over the apparatus. They can do whatever they want, and they chose to do something else. I don't say that to make you love Democrats. I say that to give some level of a black pill, the way Mark would say, a black pill. Let's see. Dirty laundry, number 1, JT Brilliant Chat. What is it? 0 MAGA, 1 versus Trump, 2 big pass bill. All right. And let's see, General Troy. You either have class or you don't. You either leave money on the dresser or you don't. Oh, you're talking about oh, you're talking about the conversation we had with Ted Rall. Like I said, man, that's a weird conversation to have. I shouldn't have asked the question. I guess I did ask the question. We landed into it. We're men. That's okay. We're men. We do shit like that. Locker room talk. Let's see what else. General Troy, you'll either have class or you don't. You either leave money on the dresser or you don't. You always leave money on the dresser. Ain't that right, General? Here's your 25 cents. Let's see. Who else? Right now, it's fair to say, prepare for the Azerbaijanian of the Middle East. The West wants it, and looks like Arab leadership wants it. It looks that way, doesn't it? It does look that way, don't it? It does look that way. Arabization of the Middle East. Arabization of the Middle East. I agree with Sarah on this one. I agree with Sarah. Russia, China need to be more active. This notion of sitting back and like, we're a civilizational state. We can beat it for thousands of years. We'll be here. Yeah, no. Nobody's saying go to war, but definitely get more aggressive politically. All right. I'm going to leave. I'm going to be back by 11 o'clock. Gerald Salente is going to join me. I do not know how long the video is going to go. I'm dragging ass right now. You probably can see it. I am out of coffee. No bullshit, I'm out of coffee. So that will not help me right now. Either way, I will be back at 11. He is a firebrand. He is a great guest. I've had him a few times on the radio show. So it'll be great to be able to talk to him again. I haven't spoken to him in like a year more. So you all have a fantastic evening. I will see you in 30 minutes, give or take. And thank you for all of it. Yes, I'll make sure what it is. So thank you for it. I'll see you in a very short period of time. Be safe and try to be kind.